Guess what, theology nerds? This is Trip, and you're listening to Homebrewed Christianity, where since the year 2008, we've been bringing you ideological ingredients so you can brew your own faith. And today on the podcast, we have something exciting. This is a party, a launch party. My friends, Sarey and Dan, have put together a great online resource called So You're Deconstructing. That's right. It's a website for people that are, quote, deconstructing. And I know a lot of you theology nerds, that's not where you are right now, but you probably have friends that are. And we wanted to help launch this out in the world so that everyone knows there's a nice, organized, high-quality theology nerd collection of baby steps for people that are questioning, thinking, challenging, deconstructing their faith. All you have to do is go to soyou'redeconstructing.com, and you'll see what Sarey and Dan have been putting together. And in order to launch this, we've decided to play a game. That's right. We're having a fantasy draft. Just like fantasy football. Except we're not drafting players for your football team. We're drafting elements of evangelical youth group culture for your team. Yeah. You'll hear more about it in this episode because we'll explain it before it gets going. But this is a party. It's a launch party. It involves a lot of inappropriate humor and commentary. So, for example, if you're going to be disappointed that 4 different individuals process some of their previous experiences with snark, inappropriate language, jokes, suggestive comments and things, this is not the episode for you. Like, Mom, don't listen to this one. You just don't. It'd be the jokes that when you hear them, you kind of roll your eyes and imagine that that's not the jokes I make when I'm with certain other friends. Like, don't listen to this, Mom. Just don't. Let Dad listen to it. And if there's certain parts of it that are funny and he thinks you'll like, he can just tell you about it. Right? So if you think you might fit in that category, don't listen. And I don't want to get messages from people that say, Trip, that was a thoroughly inappropriate joke. It is. This is a fun party. We were all hanging out on Zoom. Significant time in lockdown. We were partaking of different beverages, and we were just having a good time. Me and 3 of my friends. Dan from the You Have Permission podcast, Sarey, who is the brains behind So You're Deconstructing, and then Mason. That's right, a People's Theology podcast. The 4 of us got together. We had this fantasy draft, and here's what we need you to do. Listen, enjoy it, and then what? Vote. If you go to tripfuller.com, the post for this podcast episode has the opportunity for you to vote. Which of these 4 fantasy youth group culture teams is going to win? Like, and I'm not asking for you to vote for me if you don't think I deserve it. But I really put my best foot forward, you know? I tried. But Dan, Sarey, Mason, they also brought some significant heat. Now, this is a long episode. You might take you more than one listen, but it was so much fun. I mean, we had to have a potty break in the middle of it. Anyway, before we jump in, I want to just let everyone know this week on not So You're Deconstructing. That's the website you should all go check out. But on You Have Permission podcast, Dan Koch's podcast, I'm there with a couple of my other friends having a much more serious conversation about processing experiences while you're deconstructing, going through faith transitions and such. And I'm also on Mason's podcast, A People's Theology, talking about my new book, Divine Self-Investment. So if you want to go hear that conversation, then you want to check out both of those podcast episodes. Last thing, coming up next for Homebrewed Christianity community members, those that went to homebrewedcommunity.com, they donate each month. Join the private Facebook group. Get the secret, private, members-only podcast feed. Well, we are going to be having some members-only deep dives into different philosophers. That's right. Y'all have been giving me input and voting on it. I've been talking to friends to come on, do a little intro lecture, give us a selection of readings to interact with each other in a little live environment. And we're going to be doing quite a few of them because it's going to be fun. I mean, I like philosophy. So good reasons to introduce different thinkers. But we already got some on the horizon on Levinas. on Paul Ricoeur, on Deleuze. So members, put that on your on that anticipatory nerdy mantle. If you want to join up, you can go to homebrewedcommunity.com. And last thing, if that wasn't enough to lure you to join the Homebrewed community, coming up, Tom Ord and I are going to be doing a class called Becoming Christian. That's right. We're going to take an open and relational theological approach through each line of the creed. I know he's Nazarene, I'm Baptist. Neither one of us very creedal, but it is an outline of the historic Christian confession, and we're going to see just what happens when you think open and relational and go through it. We will announce the details in the next week or so, but that will be the first big class into the new year. And then after that, we got a little social justice in the economy class I'm going to be doing with Jorg Rieger and friends, but shush, no details now. We got to go have a party. It's time for a party. So You're Deconstructing.com party.
Hello, everybody. This is Trip, and today on the podcast, you get not one, not two, but a triune connection. That's right. 3 of my friends all on the podcast at once. I think since Dan's the only one here with a beard, he's going to play the father. Dan Koch is the father. Sarey is definitely the second person in the Trinity, the incarnate Sophia. And then there's only one person on Twitter that I said, who is it that has jokes that would make what we're about to do fun? And I said Mason, and they were like, oh, I like his Twitter, but no one knows Mason. All right,
I feel like Mason, like the wind, came out of nowhere. He was like, day.
That's why I'm the third person.
Mason.
That's why you're the spirit.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And then here's the quippiest quip guy you've ever met on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. So we're having a COVID launch party. And Dan and Sarey have been working on a brand new website for people that are processing their deconstructive movements and such. And I wanted to let everyone know about it. But I also did not want to talk about deconstruction for an hour and a half. So I thought they could tell you about it, and then we will make funny jokes about evangelical youth group experience. So that's where we're going. But before Sarey or Dan, what do y'all want to tell Mason and I about this new website y'all are launching, so we can tell the people we know that are just starting recovery about it?
Well, it started as a tweet of mine as a joke, and now I can't remember exactly what the tweet was, and I should have pulled it up beforehand, but I am not disciplined enough to have done that. But it was something like, what if there was this thing but for deconstructing evangelicals, like some of these resource sites or whatever, like LinkedIn or something like that. And then I was like, oh, like maybe we could do that. And then I told Sarey, or Sarey saw the tweet. She's like, hey, if you do that, I'd like to be involved. And I was like, I'm kind of thinking about doing it. And so we started talking about it, and it's called So You're Deconstructing.com. And the name was actually the first thing. Then everything else came from there. So, Sarey, why did you want to get involved when you saw this little idea?
Yeah. Well, the site you mentioned was It Gets Better.
Oh, It Gets Better, like for gay kids.
Yeah. It Gets Better.
You for remembering, yeah.
So, yeah,
so
and even when
was It Gets Better, but for former evangelicals. That was the tweet.
Right. Exactly. Which was inspirational to me, of course. But even when I showed my...
It does not get better, by the way.
Just hasn't
it's
yet for you, Mason.
Lie. You're just too young, dude. It's gonna get better. Trust us.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to help people with that. Even the term, I don't even think we like the term deconstructing, because it has such a negative vibe to it. Like when I showed the site to my dad, who's gone through his own deconstruction process, he's like, I don't like that word deconstruction, because how I feel is like, I get it now. Like I'm in this new land where things are a lot better. And so because we use that term because it's what people know, it's familiar, people kind of will know what we're talking about. It's shorthand, but yeah, the site's there to kind of turn a crisis into an opportunity. So,
I like that. I hadn't heard that one yet.
But say it again, like with like, like evangelical confidence, so that way people believe you.
Let me try. I'll channel it. We want to take a crisis and turn it into an opportunity. How's that?
Yeah.
We just want to help people through this season of crisis on their spiritual journeys.
Intentionally?
Intentionally.
Intentionally.
And intention.
Until they just have this hedge, until there's just this hedge of protection.
Hedge of
Community?
Hey, hedge of protection. I'm jotting that down for the game later. That's good.
Now, Mason, could you say that again, but at the beginning say, hey, friends? Because I feel like if you say, hey, friends, at the beginning in youth minister voice, it could really push people over the edge.
People of God. Hey, friends. Right? Like, you just got to, like...
Yeah.
I love you get
Cheesy.
people of God in there almost as if it's not part of the sentence.
So aggressive.
Whereas one other person, a non-evangelical, would have just taken a breath before they speak. The evangelical pastor, like, inward speaks like, people of God, hey, friends. You know, it's just like not even, it doesn't even make the transcript, you know? So it's soyou'redeconstructing.com.
SoYou'reDeconstructing.com, and that's Y-O-U-R-E. Mm-hmm.
Spelled out. It's not so you are deconstructing. That would be if it was exclusively for Gen Z. No, but I could see a world where 3 to 5 years from now, we rebrand it, and if the word deconstruction is no longer the word people are using, that's not the point of it. It's basically a resource page. So there's a page on therapy, and if that's right for you, there's a page on spiritual practices. There is, and then the kind of the meat of the site is this topics page, which has 15, 17 sort of different issues that commonly come up for people who are going through faith change, and then a bunch of resources, and they tend to be organized from least controversial to kind of most out there. So, or easiest to understand to hardest to understand. So Trip, all the homebrewed episodes are near the bottom of the list anytime you show up on there. And then there's also a page about communities, so digital or in person, how to find an affirming church, for instance. And then one other thing is, the testimonies page. So sort of this is actually how it started for me, is I asked You Have Permission Facebook group members to describe the emotional experience of going through a faith change. And they gave me just so much cool stuff. And then that actually kind of was the first thing we had as we were developing the site. So there's some kind of emotional camaraderie there.
Yeah, and I wanted to say about the topics page too. It's listed last in our website menu, and I think even though that's what we've been referring people to the most. People want to know what the fuck is going on with evangelicals and Donald Trump, and so you'd be like, well, check out this section of our topics page. Or do I have to believe my grandma's going to hell? No, here's some alternatives to that. Here's the hell section, right? But we put that last because we want people to be guided through some of the other stages, because we don't want to be in this delusion that if we just get all our ideas straight, then we'll be fixed and we'll be right as rain. There's a lot
Sarey,
of other aspects.
Be careful. You're hanging out with 3 white male theologian podcasters. So careful what you say about getting our ideas right. Okay.
Yeah,
that
I really feel like
turf.
the website is missing a collection of processed memes. I feel like that would really push it over the edge. People are like, "Oh, this is helpful." Praying. I like that. Should I go to therapy? And then you're like, "Wow."
Something about memes can be really therapeutic. We maybe should think about adding that.
I know, but if they're too aggressive, it makes Dan uncomfortable because he can't perform his moderation with it around. Okay, so before we go. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, is there going to be a page on the website about how to navigate when John Piper farewells you?
Oh.
Maybe a little too niche. There's just not that many people that would need that page. So I'm not sure Sarey and I are going to, dedicate our free time.
Didn't Grudem just farewell Piper?
Oh shit!
Yeah, he
didn't really farewell him, but he kind of
Well, they all got upset because that people started breaking rank over Donald Trump, and
right.
It was the first time I ever thought to myself, Piper isn't complete reprobate.
Oh, 4 years ago, I get the reprobate joke, but 4 years ago he criticized Trump and gun policy, and I was like, John Piper And I really respect this thing about John Piper, and I was really surprised then he didn't cave over the 4 years like a lot of his, like, you know, Al Mohler and those guys kind of ended up caving, and he didn't. So that's pretty great.
You know what's crazy, though, is he also didn't cave in his description of a God who's a significantly bigger asshole than Donald Trump. Like,
I know.
Like,
this
his
is
God,
the wrong audience for that take. I get it.
Well, I'm just saying. We're not sure if God's worthy of worship, but he really wants his, you know, white supremacist president to be. Now,
I want to say one thing before we move on from the site, which is just that today's episode is funny, and we're going to jab a lot at our evangelical upbringing, and we're going to be heavily ironic. But the site is not that way. The site is like actually quite serious. You could send somebody with like a real mental disorder and real anguish to the site, and hopefully it would be helpful for them to like navigate a very serious crisis. That said, I can't wait to talk about buttholes with you guys today.
Oh man, that I just am sad that this isn't a video podcast, because Sarey's face when you said you're looking forward to talking about buttholes, she cringed. Mason started licking his lips, and all right. So before we get into the game, I really feel like it's essential for each of you to demonstrate your evangelical youth group street cred, and to do it in to tell a short yet either awkward or embarrassing story, where when we hear this, we're like, yeah, they are an authority when playing said game. They didn't just go, Googling or picking up jokes from watching Saved multiple times.
Good.
So, and people get used to what voice is attached to what person.
Great.
So, Mason.
Yeah.
And you need to tell everyone about your podcast if they don't already listen to it.
I mean, it's no homebrewed Christianity. It's only the second best theology podcast out there. But,
I mean,
so with that said, yeah, I mean, I host a podcast called A People's Theology. You should check it out. It's on all the things that you can listen to podcasts on. Yeah, with that said, my youth group story, there are so many. What? Oh, actually, here, I'm about to tell a story that I've never told anyone. Okay.
Hell yeah.
So you're about to get exclusive access to great
patron only access.
Patron only.
Patron level.
Criminalizing information. So one time, so I lived like a block away from my church. And so I was at my church all the time, even outside of like youth group and Sundays and everything. And there was one time, and I don't know why I did this, but there was one time where I went to my youth group room, and I was the only person. It was hours before youth group was going to start. And, we had like the big, like computer monitor and sound system and everything. And so I went and I somehow figured out the password to the computer and went onto the computer, nobody in the room. And for whatever reason, I was on Wikipedia and I typed in breasts on Wikipedia. And I don't know what compelled me to do so.
I have a few ideas.
I as much as it was like the softest core of porn you could ever find on Wikipedia.
Yeah, whatever the Wikipedia image of breasts is.
Yes, that I was looking at that in my youth group room when I was like 14 or 15. It was great. So
that's good.
There you go. Never told anybody that ever in my life.
You feel better?
Caught?
Dan, Jesus is always watching.
I don't feel caught. We'll see how I do after more of this brandy.
Also, who drinks brandy, Mason?
A classy men.
Clearly, I guess Canadian men, according to Dan.
That was before we started taping. Yeah.
I mean, all these all the people listening now, they're going to go, "Wow!" And he's a recruiter for theological education. I'm going to have to get myself to United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities.
Oh, is that your gig?
That is my gig. That's what pays the bills.
Oh, you work with Kyle.
I do work with Kyle.
Dan's a fan of Kyle.
Yeah.
I just emailed Kyle today.
I might do a correspondence MT there. We'll see.
Well, talk to me.
Well, it's in like 5 years, so
okay,
yeah.
Great.
But I've talked with Kyle about it. Yeah, that's very cool, man. I didn't know you worked there.
Yeah.
All right, who's next?
Sarah, you got one lined up?
Why don't you go and I'll think about it a little bit more.
So because it will make for better content, I'm not going to tell a story of my own. You're going to have to trust me that I know what the fuck I'm talking about when it comes to being raised evangelical. I'm going to tell a good friend story. He's told it publicly, but just to be safe, I won't say his name. This friend, I didn't grow up with him. I met him in college. So this friend is a sophomore in high school. He goes with his other sophomore in high school friend, big youth group kids, to the junior high lock-in because they're in a band with an 8th grader. Okay, and so they go to the lock-in, and neither my friend nor his buddy inexplicably have masturbated yet, and they are sophomores in high school. And it gets to the late hours, the wee hours of the lock-in, and the youth pastor starts getting serious about lust, right? And he's doing his bit. And, you know, the emotions are high, sugar, caffeine, it's late. And he says, okay, guys, everybody raise your hands if you have looked at a woman lustfully. And everybody raises their hand. And then he says, okay, now lower your hand if you've masturbated. And every arm goes down except him and his buddy, who are sophomores in the junior high group. And he went home that night and masturbated for the first time.
Oh, no. Aww.
He hadn't done it, and that was the impetus for him to start masturbating. I just think that's the funniest reversal of a youth group story I've ever heard.
With every head bowed and every eye closed, and clearly no one does that ever.
As I recall him telling it, it was nobody's eyes were closed. Everybody saw that they were the only two that hadn't done it, so that probably increased the pressure, figuratively and literally, to go take care of things.
Yeah, because if that happens again, you want to have your hand down, but you also don't want to break a 10 commandment and lie. So you at least gotta.
It's a real problem. It's a real problem. Yeah,
I know. Sarey, did you know that this is what was going on inside all the middle school boys when you were in youth group?
I didn't really know until college because I did not know. I did not know. I don't have really great stories. I remember there being kind of reverse peer pressure because all my friends were homeschoolers and no one was allowed to do anything. But my parents were fine with me listening to secular music. They didn't care. But I got into DC Talk and Newsboys just because that's all my friends were allowed to listen to. But when Free at Last came out, they were not allowed to listen to the sex song, I Don't Want It. Trip, do you know that song? Please tell me. It's like instead of I want your
I don't want it, I don't want it, want your sex for now.
Sex for now. Yeah. Anyway, I lied and said that I was not allowed to listen to that song either because it was too sexual. But I totally was. My parents didn't care.
That's incredible.
But I did totally lie about that just to fit in, you know?
I think that is okay. That's so good. Having been one of the more I was also allowed to listen to secular music and stuff. I don't think I've ever heard a story of somebody pretending their parents were more strict to fit in. That's incredible.
Oh yeah, it was bad enough I was allowed to watch The Simpsons. That was almost enough to make me not, you know.
Yeah, that's backsliding.
The only way I was able to get by in high school was I would tell everybody that my two favorite bands in the world were Haley Williams' favorite bands in the world, The Chariot and Me Without You. That was the only way I got ever throughout middle school and high school.
Haley, the singer of Paramore.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who else were you thinking he was referring to?
Oh, I've got some evangelical bona fides. When my old band Sherwood was on Warped Tour in 2004, so was Paramore before they kind of blew up when they had their first record out. And Haley was 17, and so was Zach, the drummer. And they were in a Bible study, the Warped Tour Bible study with me a few times, which I didn't go to super regularly. But that's a pretty evangelical, I guess, right? I still, even when I was in
You were
Warped
no-
Tour, I was going to Bible study. That's pretty. Come on,
Yeah.
that's bona fides right there.
Yeah, or no bona fides.
It was like Under Oath, Me Without You, a couple guys from Sherwood, Paramore. I think that was pretty much the whole Bible study.
And now either you're not Christians or you all are like the most progressive of Christians.
I think that pretty much to a man and woman, that's the case now. Yeah. Yeah.
So your stories made me I hadn't thought of this story in a long time, but my best friend and I were in bands from like 12 years old when we started learning the guitar together, and we were in youth group together, right? So every summer mission trip, our goal was to figure out a way to play from stage so that all the girls knew you were gifted. And then on Mission Fuge, the Southern Baptist Service summer camp, we would on the ride up there from North Carolina to Florida, get the Summer Guitar World magazine that had all the new gear that's coming out. And the cool thing about the magazine is like all this new pedals, all these new guitars. And we would sit and figure out how much money we would have to make to buy our dream guitar amp pedal rig setup.
Yeah.
Well, it was our 8th or 9th grade year, and we're driving to West Palm Beach, and that year's guitar magazine this time had all these girls in bikinis holding everything instead of just, 80s rockers, right? And I didn't want to get in trouble, so we also didn't want to not make our gear list. So we're like not letting our youth minister see it. Now, everything's all well and good, but these other kids in the youth group that was like sharing the house we were in, there's probably like 17 or 18 kids in it, boys, and half of them are in another youth group. Well, they found it. They were not interested in the cost of a high quality like Boss distortion pedal or like they were very much interested in a very, very tan and like car model-esque ladies.
Yeah,
and they're like, where did you get this?
Double V cutout.
Yeah.
Electric guitar.
They were not interested in the Marshall stack. They were interested in others. So
other stacks.
Other stacks.
Their youth minister of the other youth group was my youth minister when I was in middle school, right? So we were friends. I've known him since I was in 3rd grade, right? He was at our church, and then he had switched churches, but we were on summer mission trip together. He comes into our room with me and Matt, my best friend, at probably 11:30 or something, and our lights are out. We're not even talking anymore. And he flips the lights on, and he goes, "What is this?" I'm like, "Hey, that's my magazine. Where'd you get that?" He goes, "There are a bunch of middle school boys in there staring at titties and doing who knows what. And I don't know why you brought this here. This is not acceptable. Blah, 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 blah." And I'm like, no. We do this every year. And I don't want to say his name. It's about the guitar pedals. And I like bring it out. We have like a spreadsheet, with costs and everything. And he's like, "There's absolutely no way that you're looking at this magazine just for the guitar pedals." And we went back and forth for a bit, right? And Matt is like, come on. No, I'm not joking. We didn't like fabricate a cost list just to not get in trouble. We've done this every year. Like when you were our youth minister, we did this. He goes, "But then those magazines have just tits popping out of nowhere, And he's like,
as
no.
usual, it says more about the person who's angry than it does about the kid.
Yeah. And was he really saying tits that many times?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he did. And then
no, you don't say it like
and then
that. That's not respectful.
Matt was trying to get him to calm down, and he goes, "I just don't know what to do, and I don't know what you were going to do with this. I'm keeping it, and I'm giving it back to your mother," And I was like, "All right, buddy, all right." And I like walk to the door and open it and yell, into the, like there's like 4 bedrooms with bunk beds in it. And I go, he has confiscated my magazine and I will be using my imagination for all whack off material going forward. And,
Wow.
and I was so mad. And he was just like, be quiet. You're going to bed. And like the door's all shut and he runs off. And our youth minister at that point comes in. And he's like, what just happened? I was like, his youth stole my magazine. We're looking at titties, and now I'm in trouble for it. And he's like, let's just try not to talk about this again. I'll talk to him. You say nothing. Also, it took me 5 minutes to come in here because I had to quit laughing. That was hilarious. Now, what am I going to whack off to? End quote. That's what you just told your former youth minister. And anyway, so now anytime I get together with youth group friends, at some point, if things get quiet, someone stands up. This even happened at my grandfather's funeral. Not at the funeral. After the funeral, we're all drinking on my grandpa's porch, right? And it got quiet, and then Matt stood up. Hey, now what am I going to whack off to? Anyway, yeah. Well,
so we've all established our bona fides here.
There's always Wikipedia, Trip. There's always Wikipedia.
I didn't have no smartphone.
Nice
Nice callback. Nice call. Oh my gosh, we just jinxed on nice callback.
Jinx.
That's what happens when you make websites together.
Trip, so we know Mason's drinking some apple brandy. What are you drinking?
Oh, I'm drinking.
This is a release. This is a party, a launch party.
It's a launch party.
Well, I am. I have a what you would call it extremely stiff diet Dr. Pepper, but mostly just bourbon.
It's like a really phallic episode, by the way.
It's trending that way. I promise that not all the game is sexual. Yeah.
Well,
just a little bit.
I know.
Even though that's what your people wanted.
It is true.
I know.
In the voting, we had
you
to
have
make
to
an
explain
editorial.
this.
I'll explain that later. I should explain the editorial decision that we
I also got some of our local craft European lagers over here beside me because I know Dan's been connoisseuring Euro lagers.
Love them. Yep, I'm all about that.
I was hoping to not pee 4 times during this, so I had to start off with extremely strong.
Yeah.
bourbon.
Sari, what do you have?
It's a cider, but we don't really like it. We like wild ferment ciders, like Basque style.
Yes.
And this was just kind of the best available at the closest place. So I'm not even going to tell you what it is.
Okay, good.
But it's a cool can. It's
That
pretty
is a cool can. I was cleaning out sort of the storage area the other night looking for, and finding a bottle of champagne from our wedding almost 11 years ago to celebrate Biden's victory, which we then got too tired and didn't open it. Anyway, as I was doing that, I also
You're
found...
old.
I know. I also found this Trader Joe's 2012 vintage ale made by Unibrew up in Quebec. And it says on the back, best before 2015, but it's pretty good. It's a dark Belgian ale and it's 9%. And by the end here, I'm going to be unrecognizable because it's big. It's like 25 ounces. So
Congratulations.
What kind of music deals and podcasting are you doing to be able to buy from Trader Joe's? My goodness.
These used to be $4.99 back when they made it. I don't know if they do them anymore, but we saved a bunch and they went with us from our old house to this house. I'm not really sure what happened, but they were still in the storage area. And now I'm already feeling pretty good.
All right. So
how rich are you to have just booze that you forget about in the house?
That's true. We are so wealthy that there are $5 beers, Mason, that are on the shelf.
you probably paid more to move it than you did for the beer itself.
Yes, it's true. We did hire movers. So, yeah, tack a couple bucks on there. Yeah.
When we moved and I got the quote and then I saw how much it was going to cost to move my beer collection, I just had a really cool party. and I leaned into my 25-year-old self.
Yeah,
and,
you did the Kingdom of God thing, and you invited everybody who could come because all of your other friends had to see about a field.
Yeah, at the very end of the in the end of the evening, me and my two neighbors, who were the only ones left because we could all walk home, ended up in a kiddie pool smoking cigars in our underwear. And one of our wives found us, and they told us it was not a good life decision. And I said, yeah, but how many good life decisions do you remember well enough to retell the story? Think about these things. All right. Now,
All right.
we're going to play a game.
Yeah. And I'm nervous because I don't know how this works at all. I don't know how you recruit obscure.
So
I get like there's like two things and one of them wins and then it goes to the next one. It's like
it's a fantasy draft.
That's a tournament bracket, Sarey. We're doing a draft.
I love
I have
how
no
much
idea what
he's
we're
going to
doing.
learn about sports in this episode.
Yeah.
Like, sports is going to be great.
You're going to come out of this.
We have a
with,
lot of sports experts here.
Yep. Oh, yeah. So we're doing it's basically a draft. This is
not a beer draft.
No, not a beer draft. It's the Evangelical culture draft, or ex-evangelical, post-evangelical, whatever you want to call it. So I got the idea from a podcast I like called The Big Picture, and they have been doing, during COVID, when there's not a lot of movies coming out, they have been going back and doing drafts, competing against each other on a 1 year at a time. So they do like the 2011 movie draft, and they will have 6 categories like comedy, drama, blockbuster, sequel, whatever. And you get one film for each category, just like in like a fantasy football draft. You draft a quarterback, a couple running backs, whatever. So this is like that, but we've got 7 categories. Biblical number trip. Thought you would like that. And it's called a snake draft. So that means that the first pick of round 1 goes last in round 2. The last pick in round 1 goes first in round 2, and so
usually
on.
The woman goes last because it's a snake draft.
Come on.
Actually, the woman goes first with the snake and is deceived. Okay, and then after that follows all hell. So here's how it works.
It's not teams battling tonight.
No,
People will vote later.
Yes. So the 4 of us are going to basically compete against each other. At the end of the draft, we will each have a 7-item team, 1 item for each category.
Each of us will. We
each will have 7 items, 1 from each category. And then, Sarey, you're going to make a nice graphic, and we are going to put a vote up, and somebody will win. It's a little friendly competition. We put these various categories up for voting, and the You Have Permission Facebook group, also known as Permissionaries, which I didn't come up with but love, they picked too many sexual categories, so we whittled that down to only 1 sexual category. So let me read to you the 7 categories. These are like the positions on your team. Number 1, sexual Bible verse. Number 2, purity culture, illustration or object lesson. Number 3, theological idea you were most stoked to learn existed. 4, Christianese phrase. 5, young earth creationist argument. 6, youth group ritual or icebreaker. Trip, you have a distinct advantage over us on that one. And 7, my favorite category, Christian equivalent of a secular band / if you like blank, you'll love blank. So those are the 7 categories. I already did a random order generator to figure out what order we would go in. Does everybody understand the rules of the game?
Yes, if you like Sherwood, or if you like Semisonic, you'll like Sherwood.
Semisonic is a good one.
Are we saying ones that we've heard before, or are we saying ones that we're coming up with that we think are good?
I think that, so for any of these, it just has to exist. So, and then like people will then vote on our whole team and say, Sarey, for instance, has the best like rounded out roster of the evangelical experience. And here's the big strategic thing. You will end up with 1 of every category, but you can draft any category at any time as long as you haven't already drafted it, right? So if you're like, I really want to get to this one, before anybody else says it. Like, let's say you really want hedge of protection for Christianese phrase, and you think, well, Sarey mentioned hedge of protection as a joke earlier. I don't want anybody else to get that. Then you might do that as your first pick. But then someone else might pick a purity culture illustration with their pick. We don't have to pick the same category as we go. You can kind of strategize the item that you think you want to make sure you get before it gets taken. That's the kind of competitive part that I love.
Okay, cool. I'll learn as we go along. Sounds great. Let's go.
Okay. Are we ready to play the ex-evangelical fantasy draft, Trip?
I think so.
AKA not a bracket, Sarey?
It's not a bracket.
Not a bracket.
Not a tournament.
It's a draft.
It's a
It's a
draft.
snake
It's
draft.
like-
Snake draft.
Yeah.
Okay, so according to the random number generator, here is the pick order. It goes Mason, Sarey, Trip, then me, and then we flip that for round 2 and so on. So, Mason, first overall pick. What are you taking in what category?
Oh, man. God, this feels like Jeopardy. Rest in peace, Alex Trebek. You know what? I'm going to go with, just because I feel the most confident about it, and because Dan is in this, and I feel like he might actually end up being really good at this, I'm going to go with the Christian equivalent to a secular band. Okay, you ready for this one?
Yes, I'm ready.
So mine is, if you like Eminem, you will like KJ52.
I knew it was going to be KJ52. Yes.
Which I guess he's still making music, by the way.
That's
It's
incredible.
incredible to me.
That's an elite pick, Mason. That's a good pick. Because he is like we actually, Sherwood co-headlined, or I guess we were like main support for a KJ52 headlined Christian festival in Washington once. Is one of only 2 Christian festivals we ever played. And he was the headliner. And he has a song literally where he's responding to the Eminem Dear Santa song.
They literally have diss tracks.
So that's actually the most appropriate of all the possible. If you like, then you'll like that. That's a good pick, man. That's,
Not to mention that they're both white.
of course, white rapper is right.
Well, Christians love white rappers.
Right. We get all the hippity hoppity, the syncopated beats and feeling vaguely sexual without any of the black culture with which we are quite uncomfortable when we're honest with ourselves.
I just remember how pumped I was when John Rubin's first album came out.
As much as you could be like a as much as you could be like a B-rated KJ52, John Rubin was the B-rated KJ52.
I'm steering clear of the rap ones, but when I was looking this up, I did see one for T-Bone, which was a white Christian rapper that I was fairly into at one point.
I
Sorry?
was just writing down a T-Bone one.
Okay, good. I won't spoil it. I won't spoil
Don't
it.
ruin Sarey's
I'm not going to
T-Bone.
ruin it. I won't ruin it. I didn't think you guys would know T-Bone.
Dan?
That's surprising.
Oh, yeah.
to me.
Yeah, he was on Crystal Lewis's label.
Mm-hmm. I ain't that
surprise.
hip on getting drunk on liquor, 'cause it's a Holy Ghost that gets me drunk much quicker. T-Bone lyrics.
Wow. All right,
you could
Sarey,
also do. Okay.
you're up. You can pick that same category, a la Jeopardy, where often you stick with it, or you can pick any other category.
Oh gosh. I will go young Earth creationist argument. Satan put dinosaur bones in the ground.
Yes. Satan put the fossils in. That's a great pick. That's a great pick. I think Trip had that one lined up, ready to go.
I did. And I even thought I
Oh,
might go early for that one,
Yeah.
just because.
Sorry, I'm
Satan
sorry.
buried the fossils.
To test your faith.
To test your faith. Sarey, will you give us a little explanation? In case people haven't heard this one, will you please explain the
Oh
argument?
yeah.
Yeah. Also, remind everyone what science and religion organization you work for. That way they know where to go for additional resources.
Oh my gosh.
I was being
don't work
sarcastic.
Okay. I'm like, do I have to start talking about Biologos? I work for
Do you really?
No, she does
No,
not.
I don't work for
Oh, I was gonna
Biologos.
say.
I work for a similar organization, but not. It's actually on the website. Anyone can figure out where I work. The argument is that the fossils present a challenge to young Earth creationism because they seem pretty old. There's been other explanations I've heard, but the most colorful one is that Satan was allowed to put the fossils in the ground in order to test your faith.
Okay, I haven't heard this.
By the way,
sorry, say that again, Mason.
Very process theology to allow Satan to test your faith. I mean, who knew that process theology was compatible with young Earth creationism? But here we are.
This is well, I don't want to say specific. It's not because I grew up in a very Reformed evangelical, very conservative Reformed.
So then it really has to be kind of God's sovereignty.
Yeah. So I didn't hear that there. This was more like the Calvary Chapel vibes of the world, you know?
I never heard the allowed part of it. I don't think I ever heard this until I was an adult, and so I just laughed at it. But there's a very funny theology of God and Satan's interaction that's incredibly specific that you'd have to get to. Well, here's
it was like the beginning of Job. Yeah.
Yes, it's like it's all been like Job. Yeah. The accuser comes in and they're kind of, we'd like to approach the bench, and they go and they're making deals. That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, Tripp, you have the next pick.
Well, now I'm worried because I only have 2 young Earth creationist options because, well, I didn't hang out with young Earth creation except for this one youth retreat, and that's where I heard the dinosaur bone thing. The other one, no joke. Now I don't know if this is popular, but I heard it straight from an apologist's mouth that if you carbon date a live mollusk, it says that it's thousands of years old, and mollusks have a life expectancy of around 45 years. Therefore, carbon dating's a lie. The Earth isn't that old, and you should believe the motherfucking Bible. That part was not exactly how the apologist put it, but
that's paraphrased.
Now, as a young lad with some scientific awareness, I approached said apologist afterwards and asked him if he understood how carbon dating worked, because I had watched some National Geographic episodes. And needless to say, his understanding of carbon dating and the inability to apply said statistical analysis of a piece of inanimate material applied to a live a mollusk, he didn't understand why that would be problematic. And so I just set it aside. And that was my backup answer for this. But you don't carbon date a live mollusk, or you'll learn that the Earth has to be 7,000 years old or something, because obviously.
Yeah, that's good. The carbon dating the live organism, that's a good one. Okay, so with my pick, because I only actually have one written down, I'm going to go with purity culture, illustration, or object lesson. Although I'm fairly confident that no one else is going to pick this one. But I saw it at least once. It is where the teacher, for instance, in my 8th grade Bible class, he took a blue and a pink piece of construction paper and then slowly dripped white Elmer's glue in between the 2 pieces of paper and pressed them together and rubbed them together a bit. And then waited.
We waited a couple minutes. Story.
We waited a couple minutes, and while we're waiting to pull them apart and see that, they kind of stuck to each other, the idea being that every time you have sex, you lose a piece of yourself and it gets wrapped up with the other person. While we were waiting for that, he said, what do you guys think the glue represents? And a kid was like, semen? And he said, well, I was going to say cum, but yeah, semen works too.
What is wrong with people?
This fucking guy. He also told us a story about how his wife caught him masturbating, and he lasted 3 months, and he got fired. Great. So somebody had some kind of oversight in my evangelical junior high.
When you said lasted 3 months, I thought you were talking about Sting.
He and his wife were really into tantric stuff, and her catching him was actually just part of this big elaborate build-up that they were doing. No, So anyway, he got fired. But that's my choice for purity culture illustration / object.
God, I thought I was a bad youth pastor.
Okay, and now I also only have one young earth creationist argument. So now my round 2 pick, I'm going to take young earth creationist argument, and I'm going to say canopy theory. Does everybody know what canopy theory is?
No,
Mason
I know Peter Berger's sacred canopy.
No, it's not sacred canopy. Mason just.
I have no more picks. I'm gonna have to go search right now on Google.
Yeah, you're gonna have to
other
Google
evidence,
or maybe check Wikipedia. You seem
because
to be
dinosaur
really
bones and water canopy were the only 2 things I had. I was convinced no one was gonna pick either one of those.
Hey Mason, cue my uncut gems GIF. This is how I win. Okay.
It's a gift.
Oh my God.
Is it GIF or GIF? I always forget.
I don't
Did
know.
I ruin it by doing it wrong?
But
The guy who created it called it
fine.
GIF, by the way. So that's my argument.
Oh, okay. All right. So canopy theory, to refresh, this
praise
is
the
an
Lord.
explanation for how there could have been dinosaurs and other kinds of weird life forms that aren't here now. And the idea is that when the Earth was created 6,000 or 7,000 years ago, there was a canopy of water vapor that surrounded the globe in the atmosphere. And this made the Earth more warm and tropical, generally speaking, which allowed the greenhouse effect means more energy from the sun and therefore larger creatures or whatever. And that the dinosaurs don't go on the ark because they're too big. The funny thing about this argument is a lot of the dinosaurs were really small. So I don't understand that. Anyway, they don't go on the ark. The water canopy is the flood, is Noah's flood. So that is the water that creates the flood. And then after the flood, the canopy's gone, the earth cools down, and the dinosaurs can't live anymore. And this explains how there are dinosaur bones, but there's no dinosaurs now, even though it's only been 6,000 years since the flood. This is my personal favorite young earth creationist argument, not least because it is still taught today, and it was actually disavowed by young earth creationists in the 80s when someone did the math and said that it would have been something like 130 degrees on earth with that much water suspended above the earth, and nothing could have lived. But it's the kind of confirmation bias that you just can't put a price on.
Because when you do the scientific calculations for how a mass of water in the sky would raise the temperature of the earth, you're like, whoa, we can't go there. But
all right, Tripp, it's your pick.
All right, I'm going to go with just because I love the Bible so much, sexual Bible verse. And
yes.
I have a collection of these because I was youth
It's
minister
so
a long
hard to
time.
pick.
But I have one that is, if you just read the text against itself, it is simultaneously like awkward, funny, kind of creepy, but also liberative for all the ladies in the house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 17. Now, you know how Ezekiel, he has no boundaries. So I'm not suggesting this is a model of discussion with teenagers whatsoever, but nonetheless, he says, "You also took fine jewelry I gave you, the jewelry made of my gold and silver, and you made for yourself male idols and engaged in prostitution with them." Now,
this is the dildo this is the gold dildo passage.
Oh, this is the golden dildo passage. And see, you say to yourself, Tripp, how is this liberative for the ladies? Well, you haven't worked at a UCC youth group long enough. The problem with the dildo is not that females should not have the agency to learn to help themselves enjoy themselves and all that God gave them. It is that you should never make an idol that is a phallic. That is the big problem with this passage, is that you should never make an idol to God that is a giant phallus. The giant phallus idol has been keeping women down for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So it's not that God doesn't want you to enjoy yourself and pleasure yourself and not need a man to assist you in coming. No, that's not it at all. It's that why would you need to simulate a man in order for that to happen? God has given you all sorts of tools and creative imaginations. You, your body, and your imagination are all you need to enjoy the gift of orgasm that God has given you. And so it is an idol that you have to simulate the male in order to do so. Praise the Lord. That's biblical, and that is Ezekiel. And therefore, an essential element of graduating from a high-quality progressive youth group is making sure that each individual in the group has learned how to pleasure themselves in the name of the Lord. Amen.
So you're deconstructing.com.
I'm just glad that you did so much prep work, Trip.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A little sermon.
Oh my gosh. All right,
I was a youth minister 15 years. I have 4 of these verses and little sermonettes for them, but that was my favorite.
That's fantastic. I have another Ezekiel as one of my selects, but we'll see where we go. Sarey, you're up.
I am?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't decide between these 2 Bible verses, but I'll pick the one that just really
So you're also going with sexual Bible verse.
Sexual Bible verse. And the thing is, it's kind of sexual. Okay, I'll just read it. Job 31, 9 and 10. If my heart has been enticed toward a woman, and I have lain in wait at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another, and let others bow down on her.
Oh! Ew!
Thruple.
I think that I'm going to start replacing "go down on" with "bow down on," just going forward anytime I can.
Like I'm tuning pink, even though it's like my own.
It's your own pick. Like, so how often do you bow down on her?
It's just a basic question of biblical counseling.
Kinesthetically, bowing, it's accurate. You're basically hinging at the hips, you know?
Well, I love that he's like,
he's
like praying a curse upon himself. And I also love that he's talking about grain, you know.
He's talking about grain?
My wife, yeah, well, the first part, let my wife grind for another. It's like grinding.
I just went straight to, you know.
Yeah, grinding's not in the Bible, Dan.
Of course not. Of course not.
And honestly,
MTV The Grind.
If you're going to grind, you have to wear 2 pairs of underwear and put Gold Bond on beforehand.
That's smart. Okay, here's my exegetical question, Sarey. Is Job or whoever's speaking, is it Job speaking or someone else speaking?
It's Job. It's at the end where he's talking about like how he's been just and he's not deserved this. Is
Job saying, I've been just, and if my fucking wife is going to go around grinding grain for other people, then may they all just fuck her and she can become a whore? Is that no?
No, not at all. He's saying he's so confident that he hasn't been enticed by another woman, that he's been so faithful to her, that if he's wrong, then she can go off and find another guy. He's like giving her permission.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Then So Job is a confident man, confident in his own loving affection and.
But his confidence got him all the way to the whirlwind. You know what I mean?
True.
I think I would have quit about halfway through my first friend's speech just because I didn't want to hear anymore.
So I feel like, not because it's like necessarily like the funniest, but like I'm sure it's going to get picked at some point, and for that reason alone, I need to pick it right away. So my category is Christianese, and I have to go with guarding your heart. I mean, as a
guarding your
evangelical boy growing up, nothing was more important than making sure you were guarding her heart. But also
that's what I was going to say. Yeah. What about her heart, Mason?
Yeah, both were very important.
Both.
Yeah. I mean, every time I got busted for looking at porn, that was the first thing that were coming out of my parents' mouth. So, yeah.
Was you're not guarding your heart?
And that you're not guarding your future wife's heart.
Oh, yeah. So, that was a weird... Okay, can we riff on this for a second? The guarding... It was actually never clear to me what guarding one's heart meant, because when I'm guarding my own heart as an evangelical teenage boy, and when I'm guarding my girlfriend or my future wife's heart, there's no relation between the two. Guarding my own heart seems to be about like self-preservation and like not getting emotionally attached. And guarding my future wife's heart is like not fucking up before I marry her. And those are like not really that similar.
I really think you're overthinking this. What it really symbolizes is a short, pithy saying for you to internalize a large amount of guilt for just basic biological urges in lieu of creating a community where you can start to live with integrity with those desires. So like if you don't want to do that, and you don't want to have to be honest with like your kids in your youth group, with your parents, with their children and all that kind of stuff, you just guard some hearts. And it all works out.
It's from Proverbs. I didn't even know if it was from the Bible, but there's a proverb.
Yeah, and there's a proverb for a lot of things. Like
there's a proverb for everything.
There's a proverb for everything. Okay, Mason,
now we need to
round 3, pick one.
Okay, because I feel pretty confident about my other picks not being picked. But this one is the next one that I feel like there might be a chance that somebody else is going to pick it. But my category is going to be purity, culture, metaphor. And the classic one I heard, not only in my own youth group, but like others who grew up in evangelical culture, is the chewed gum metaphor.
Chewed gum.
Like passing around chewed gum. So like when you have sex, it's like passing around chewed gum. I made a joke about this a couple months ago where I was like, well, joke's on you evangelicals because I happen to like gum. So there's that. But anyway, chewed gum metaphor.
So like if you, let's say, are faithfully married 50 years, like by the end of your relationship, it's just like smaller, tasteless, and vapid.
It's just powder, or it's like a little rock by the end. Yeah.
Depends what brand. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're
not that, I can tell you that.
I think that somebody should have taken this further and somehow found an illustration around the fact that certain brands of gum lose their flavor within like 1 minute, like fruit stripe gum, for instance, which I would love, but would taste like nothing after 60 seconons.
That's true.
Like maybe get yourself into like an extra sugar-free gum, which is maybe 30 to 60 minutes flavor. I don't know.
It's so confusing because it's like we're going to activate your disgust mechanism psychologically to be like, well, you wouldn't eat someone else's chewed food, right? So you wouldn't want to marry someone or like have sex with someone who's had sex with other people, like, and then
Sarey gets 5 points, referencing the righteous mind.
Yes, good. Or Richard Beck, unclean. She might be
very
referencing
confusing.
both. Yeah, that's good. No, that's true. Yeah. Okay.
You know what?
So
you know what? Also, don't you remember when your parents told you that if you swallowed your gum, it was in your tummy for like a year or so?
And it ends up.
What
being
about
false.
that?
That would mean that for a year you were living in sin if you swallowed.
I had plenty of other ways of doing that anyway, so it didn't matter to me.
All right, Sarey, round 3, your pick.
Okay, so I can do any. Okay, I'll go Christianese phrase, and I'm going to go with popcorn style prayer.
Popcorn style. That's so good. Yes.
So there's different, if you're praying in a circle, as Christians are wont to do, you go, are we going to go clockwise, counterclockwise, just as the Spirit? And as the Spirit leads, it's kind of popcorn style. It's just like pop, pop, pop. There's no like set order. You don't go in an order. Popcorn.
As the Spirit leads.
Where the popcorn's going to pop. Yeah. Where's the kernel going to pop?
Oh, yeah.
The implied anti-Catholicism in this is great. I'm a big fan of it still to this day.
What do you mean?
Just like the anti high church liturgy set prayers.
Oh yeah.
I love that. I'm as low church can get.
Popcorn.
Yeah, it's very.
He is like every Sunday morning. Mason has like the stroll of regret. You know, like what did I do last night? Drooping low. He's a what's the guy that the Colonel Redenbacher or whatever, the popcorn guy?
Colonel Reckenbacher. Yeah.
Yeah. I really feel like we should do a face mashup. Mason and the Colonel. And when they're like, why are you doing that? You're like, because my ecclesiology is so low.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we did know to expect this with Trip. Trip, it's your pick now.
Oh, which one did you just do, Sarey? You did Christianese. I'll do Christianese.
Mhm.
Okay. I'll do God. God is in control. Is the number one most ridiculous, complete bullshit, giant waste of my theological time, destructive for more people's faith as possible. Like, it is just horrible. Like, if you think that God is in control is a reasonable statement to use at any one point in time, then you are postulating the possibility of God controlling everything that ever happened in history. That means that God was some lazy ass shit deity sitting on the sideline during the freaking Holocaust, when 99.999% of species have ever gone extinct, when every kid that was taken advantage of it. Like, there's a giant list of things that you would never want to say God is in control. And then if your faith is so impotent, so small and worthless that you decide to drop that line, and I've heard it as a minister a bunch of times, at a funeral of a tragic death, or in a youth group or small group setting where someone's processing trauma, then what you're doing is saying that their reality that makes you uncomfortable with it being shared or experienced or known is so uncomfortable to you that you just have to shove God's agenda into it to make meaning out of it. Because the only thing that can happen is something that God has determined, willed, or sometimes permitted, which is a giant dodge. God is in control is BS, doesn't work for Christianity, all the connections of theodicy, the problem of evil and suffering, are connected to these stupid pious lines like God is in control, or all that, or God wanted another angel in heaven, and all those stupid things. So you should, if you're deconstructing, first thing you deconstruct is divine omnipotence. God never wanted that metaphysical compliment. You should take it back and hashtag Jesus and the cross. Get rid of God as control. Stupid. It's ridiculous.
You'll find views like this and others at soyou'redeconstructing.com.
Probably said with a lot less vehement, but you know what?
That's you.
Mason wants to come.
I was just going to say, like, for those who are listening, there's no reason to ever listen to another Homebrew Christianity episode ever, because you just heard it all. All 1,000 episodes just right there in 2 minutes.
There it is.
You know, we're like, I'm 14 episodes from crossing 1,200.
Whoa.
And my podcast app thing told me, like, oh, you're nearing your 1,200th episode. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
You know, at some point, just imagine that all of a sudden I became a libertarian Calvinist. Every time it told me about my next episode, how much of my life I would feel like I wasted. Anyway, God is in control. Stupid Christianese, because secretly God is in control isn't Christianese, it's demonicese, and God's not worth worshiping.
Except our demon's real.
He had the little sum up line there. Trip, I think there are two things going on at the same time here. One is that you prepped and wrote this stuff out because you can't help it. But the second thing is that you're kind of arguing that you should win here, and you're motivating each choice with a mini sermon. And I think that you're basically unfairly benefiting yourself against us.
Well, the other answer could be, when I was setting up stuff for this, Alicia, my wife, who grew up in put the dam in fundamentalism context, I said what game we're playing, and then she started unloading all these answers on me, and I just started writing them down.
Oh,
and I was like, I'm trying my stuff out, and it turned into a very pleasant conversation where once again I was reminded that whatever religious baggage I have is so small compared to people who professionalized God is in control.
Yeah, that's true. No, that is true. Okay, so now I got my third round pick. Just want to. I know Mason's got a hard out here in about 25 minutes or so, so I'm trying to keep things going.
I mean, we can figure it out, but
okay, all right. So
the apple brandy's loosening their lanes.
I'm going to make a strategic pick because I feel like this one's going to get taken, and this might get me some vote points. I'm going to go with theological idea you were most stoked to learn existed? Guys, I'm going with universal salvation.
I knew it.
Universal reconciliation.
I knew I should have locked that one in.
Basic.
It's basic, but it's going to get me some points. This is like choosing Avengers for Blockbuster, okay? All right, you got to give one to the people.
Yeah, that's like the Captain America of progressive Christians.
Exactly. So I discovered universalism around age 20 when I was first on tour. I read a book by some liberal Mennonites called If Grace is True. And they had actually kind of a fairly convoluted argument that I don't think I would necessarily hold to today, but it was internally consistent, and it was like an option, and it kind of exploded the boundaries for me and took so much of that sort of hell pressure off my theological considerations, and just was like incredibly helpful thing for me. We don't have to talk about universalism a bunch here. Everybody sort of listening to this knows the terrain, but I was so stoked. And I was 20, so I was using words like stoked regularly when it happened. So that's my round 3 pick. Now I get the round 4 pick as well. And okay, I'm going to do a shout out to my boys, my youth group boys, Ryan, Casey, and Tyler, and to a lesser extent, Robbie, Lowen, and Joe. Ezekiel 23:20. This might be the verse I have known longest in my life.
This is my other choice. I was going to go with this one.
There she lusted.
You as well.
You had this one down, yeah.
I have it on a T-shirt.
Ezekiel 23:20. I will be able to quote it in my sleep even after Alzheimer's has ravaged my brain. There she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys and whose emission was like that of horses. I don't know what needs to be said about this. When I was 12, this to me was just the best thing in the world that this existed and was in the Bible. Like this actually, okay, this is maybe interesting. This is what makes it evangelical, right? Is like if you were not evangelical in 12, you'll find funny shit anywhere, right? And you won't feel guilty about enjoying funny sexual shit. But if you're evangelical, you have a constrained set of places you can look for such content.
Well,
and so
just try being homeschooled too.
Right, even worse. So to find this nestled near the middle of the Bible was just such joy. I think it was Tyler Akeda, our good friend, who found it first, and we would never be the same after that day.
Oh my God. See, I wanted to go Ezekiel, and as I was trying to decide between those two, that one has less liberatory exegetical options.
It's not as good for a little mini sermon, which is what you're so good at.
Because
right.
I'm trying to win this.
I'm trying to win it. Mason's trying to win this. Sarey might not be.
No, she wants to lose so that we can all put a podcast on our new podcast feed.
As an excuse to start a podcast. Yeah. But
the thing about this passage was when I was an undergrad, we had different Bible studies every night of the week that were Baptist, and different nights had different theological contingencies. And the Monday night group were the fundamentalist Calvinists, the Monday night Bible study. And they went and prayed outside of our church history professor's door for his salvation. And then like 1 week had this whole session on how he doesn't believe in the Bible, and that they believe, and they had a flyer they posted around our school that like, we believe in every word of the Bible, every underlined. And so I ordered a T-shirt with this verse on the front of it. And on the back, it said Monday Night Bible Study believes in every word of the Bible, every. And
underlined,
so, yeah. And then on the front, played that verse out when it discusses the volume, like the milliliters of donkey emissions. I underline that because like it's all God breathed. I don't know if you breathe donkey emissions, but you at least receive it. And
well,
I don't know how
if the Chicago Statement on Inerrancy is to be believed, Trip, then a good hermeneutic approach would be to look at the average emission milliliter amount of horses,
Yeah.
okay, and the average genital length of donkeys,
True
and
story.
say, look, this is who she lusted after.
Yeah.
This is what they were capable of, scientifically verified.
And it's important afterwards not to carbon date the semen.
No, because it's still alive.
Because it's
Don't-
still alive.
Still
You
alive.
can only carbon date dead semen, not live.
If
semen.
it's live, that's basically abortion. That's Omen style, spilling seed and shit.
If you start typing donkey emission into Google, donkey emission Bible verse is what will come up.
That's
Are you
what comes
serious?
up. So more people want to know about the Bible verse than want to know just about donkey emission,
Yeah,
which
so
admittedly
basically
is a
there's
pretty small subset of people that would want to know about it.
Yeah, because they're not using the word emission that much on like Pornhub.
Try
yeah,
Wikipedia
what's porn now?
at a youth group, by the way.
Try Wikipediaing donkey emission in youth group. Great callback, Mason. Man, you are the comic genius here.
It's true.
We're
It's true.
right to include you. Okay, Sarey, it's your pick.
Okay, I don't have good ones left.
You don't want to tell anyone that. You
I mean,
say, I have saved all the best for last.
I'm revising.
It's a
Confidence.
bracket, by the way, Sarey, right?
It's a bracket, right? Yeah. Can't wait till my Bible verse fights your Bible verse.
And in advance.
Okay, I'm gonna say. Okay, for theological idea you're most stoked to learn existed, and universal reconciliation is not on the table. I'm gonna go with complementarianism might be wrong.
Oh, good. That's good. Okay, what do you mean by that? How were you presented complementarianism growing up?
We're all equal, but we just have different roles.
Making us unequal.
And the right, and the roles relate strictly to gender, and mainly the roles for the women have to do with potluck preparation and teaching children under 12.
Where did you find out that it might not be true? Like, what do you remember where you were first exposed to that idea?
You know, Fuller.
In your seminary, and your
You weren't talking about my
genuinely,
last name.
yeah.
I didn't try. No, it's not about you, Trip. Okay, it's about my journey.
A strong
Yeah,
woman of God. The God
I
of
just
Deborah.
actually didn't like look into it for like a long time. I was just floating around in my like, you know, Calvinist churches where there were only dude pastors. And then I went to seminary and I was like, oh, like in my mind, it was like, oh, you just didn't really take the Bible that seriously if you didn't think that men and women had like roles, like gender roles.
You just didn't.
And then when I
Dallas is what the problem was.
Yeah, exactly. Made a
If you
huge mistake. So I got right on that slippery slope all the way.
Slid that thing down. Woo!
So anyway, that was really refreshing for me. And actually, when I actually thought about it, it just didn't even make any sense because it meant that like men and women would all be different in the same ways, you know, rather than like, oh, Mason, you have gifts that Trip doesn't have, and you know, like we're all.
Which is very true, very, very true, by the way.
Yeah,
et cetera, et cetera.
I'm not that gifted.
All right. Well, Mason, it is now your pick. You get the end of round 4 and the beginning of round 5.
Aren't you glad that
goodness.
Dan's keeping track of this?
Oh my
If
goodness!
I wasn't, Trip, we would be in round 2 right now.
We would be
Dan,
so
what's your Enneagram number, by the way?
I don't really
Awesome.
believe in the Enneagram.
Okay, well, all right.
But
well,
I would be, if it's
you're
real, I'm a
one, then.
7.
Okay.
No, if it's real, I'm a 7, not a 1.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind
I
of like
run
atonement
from-
theories. If it's real, I'm a moral influence version connected to nonviolent Christus Victor.
Yes.
If it's real.
If it's real, I'm moral. Yeah, I'm the moral
Well,
exemplar.
nonviolent Christus Victor moral influence theory. It's
not-
way you.
I like the sound of that.
I can't get into Christus Victor, but that's for another time.
You're grounded.
Wait, Mason, what's your Enneagram?
Grounded in Scripture.
I'm a 4.
Of course you are.
Okay, so I I feel a little, honestly, I feel a little threatened by the theological category, the theological idea that you're most stoked to learn about, that category.
Why do you feel threatened by that?
Because I feel like at least what I've heard has been pretty good. So it feels like
you feel like it's already tough competition. Yeah.
So I feel like I feel like I've got a good pick for it. Ready?
Okay, good. Can't wait.
So my pick for it is that the term Almighty in the Hebrew Bible basically translates to God's titties.
Look at Trip. He wanted that one.
Trip is making the craziest. He thought it would go unpicked. He's shaking his fist.
I've got I think it's like sitting in my drafts right now, but I've got like a tweet like ready to go. Like, I was unconvinced to process theology until John Cobb said that Almighty basically translates to God's titties, and that's what made me a process theologian. There has been no other like theological / biblical grounding that has been more influential in my life over the last several years since listening to that from John Cobb's own mouth. 90-year-old John Cobb talking about God's titties.
Mason, this is why we invited you on. Thank you for delivering the goods.
All that's to say, big influential by that. And I don't know if I'd be the same if it weren't for that theological idea about God's titties.
Sarey needs something cleared up here.
Well, like, I'm down with this, but you guys are just saying titties so much. I hate that.
Okay, so
I have a hard time believing that John Cobb
is,
used that word.
You were clearly drunk at beer camp, Dan, because you were in the room when it happened.
I sort of remember it. Yeah. Were you there, Mason?
I only heard it on the podcast.
Was there a 19-year-old version of you or something at beer camp, theology?
Yeah,
beer
yeah.
camp?
He couldn't get ID'd, so he couldn't come to the first beer camp.
It was 2017, right? Yeah.
So the phrase is El Shaddai, which every Amy Grant fan knows. Which I'm not even going to.
El Shaddai, Adonai.
Oh, good. I could have only gotten
age to age, you're still the same by the power of the name.
I like that minor. There's that minor 3 chord there on name.
Yeah.
That to me, when I was a kid, I was like, oh,
powerful.
That's like really Jewish sounding.
Yeah. You know what was really cool?
Because all the Christian songs didn't have major 3 chords that got a little bit
except that she didn't bring the shofar in, and that distracted me.
That is so nerdy.
Okay, that was a good pick, Mason.
We're not going to explain it any more than
no. El Shaddai, it could get translated. There are 2 translations. One is mother's breast. The other is mountain refuge. It was in reference to God is the mountain refuge or the mother's breast for the people of Israel. They're constantly persecuted on the move and such. And so John Cobb's joke, which I don't know if he meant it joke, but the way I usually repeat it as a joke, he said, well, maybe the most accurate name for God in the Hebrew scriptures is as the holy Tetons, like mountain and breast in one thing.
Tetons.
And as a youth minister, you use this story and then tell them to talk about how the liturgy is occupied by our Caesar rendering unto God unnecessary metaphysical compliments. Every time they see the word Almighty in the liturgy or a song, you scratch it out and put Holy Tetons. All of a sudden, tons of prayers and hymns are doing all the theological work you need as a high-quality insurgent process theologian. And you want to know who remembers that comment? I mean, even some like 25-year-olds, I was their youth minister, who are like atheists as can be and only go to church when they have to visit their parents. They always go like, but you know what, Trip? If I was going to be a Christian, be a holy Teton. And I'm like, praise be.
That's good. All right.
So sweet.
That was your second pick, right, Mason? Or you got one more?
I mean, was I last there?
You have 2 in a row. Did you do 2 or did you just do the 1?
I think he only did 1.
Yeah, okay, so you have another pick.
Oh my God.
Round 5.
See, Dan's keeping us on track.
Okay, because thank God for Dan. Okay, so I feel like we're on Yeah, we're on like round 5 now.
Yeah, so you have 3 picks left. This is your first of 3.
Yeah. So this is the one that I feel like I feel a little threatened by, and I'm trying to win this because
Good.
as much as I feel like I have a 5 wing in the Enneagram, I do very much have a 3 going on. So this is not the most probably popular young Earth creation evidence argument.
Okay.
But I think it is the most ridiculous and the most absurd.
I can't wait.
It's not the most popular, and it is not the most
deep. It's a deep cut.
It is a deep cut.
It's a deep cut.
Okay. You ready for this?
I'm ready. I can't wait.
Okay. So I've heard this from like fundamentalists themselves, and
stop building it up. I can't wait, Mason. Tell us.
Looking at Wikipedia, it is a thing that exists. It wasn't just the fundamentalists I heard.
How deep is this cut?
It is the cut that the Nephilim, the giants in the Bible, were actually literal and real. Okay. And so what their argument is, and it kind of actually curtails into your argument. I think you were the one that said the canopy, Dan, right?
Yes, canopy theory, yeah.
So it kind of curtails into that. But within the canopy theory is that there were the conditions that are needed for giants to exist. And what their argument is that giants could exist in a like primate form, and that was what we know as the Nephilim. And so the Nephilim actually existed, and so that's my argument, is that in the young Earth creationist theory, that the young Earth creationists believe that the actual giants of the Nephilim really, really, literally existed.
I have to tread lightly here. There are 2 people whom I love and respect who are very into Nephilim stuff. So I'm not going to say very much out of preservation of those relationships, except to say that in the Darren Aronofsky Noah film, which relies on
high quality film, he was on Homebrewed Christianity talking about it.
I got to listen to that.
Yeah, you should have been cool earlier in life.
I should have been cool 10 years ago when it came out. Yeah. So it doesn't go off the biblical account, but actually goes off like a Talmudic account, if I'm correct. And in that account, the Nephilim are like stone figures. They're not like flesh and blood or whatever. I'll just say that because I think that's cool. And it's also a very good film. If people haven't seen it, they should watch it.
But if you're Ken Ham, they were real.
I know. These couple people in my life know where I stand, but I'm not gonna dig the sword in.
Also, if I can just say that the person or the group of people that were really into the Nephilim conspiracy, if you will, were also really big into Bigfoot, which I myself, total Bigfoot believer, by the way.
You are?
Oh, without a doubt.
Okay, one of the 2 people is really into it.
I will convince you that Bigfoot is real.
I don't know if I should.
What about the beer, though? The Bigfoot beer is good.
The Yeti beers from Great Divide in Colorado?
Yeah, and Bigfoot from
the species.
Sierra Nevada.
How can you be down with Yeti but not down with Nephilim? Come on.
They're one and the same. I can't.
Nephilim are so fun. It's such a fun, sexy, cool idea.
It feels a little contradictory for me to like believe in Bigfoot but not the Nephilim. I will say that.
What about aliens? Aliens?
Yeah. I mean,
all right, Sarey, it's your pick.
You do know that know that Q is a fan of the Nephilim, right?
Oh gosh, Trip, don't pull me into this. Sarey, it's your pick.
Okay, I'm gonna go. Okay, this music one, I have like 8 written down.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of honorable mentions for the music that we'll get to.
I'm just gonna go with this little this one that's like close to my heart, and it's if you like Daft Punk, you'll love Joy Electric.
That's good.
Well played.
That is so good, but not right.
It's not right. No.
Then you don't have a deep appreciation for Joy Electric.
Joy Electric would be any electronic music at all in the secular world would be like, here's
just
Joy
the
Electric.
Only one. But really, it's more like Kraftwerk or
What
New
is-
Order or something.
What is Jason Martin doing these days even?
He's super PCA.
Yeah, he's a
vibes,
pastor.
Like, very, yeah.
What?
Very-
Yes.
He's
Go to-
PCUSA? Or no,
I follow him.
PCA.
No, PCA.
That's really depressing.
Yes.
Oh,
he's
God.
like Gospel Coalition.
I hope he's
What?
not
What
listening.
about he's like that kind of he's
Oh
in
my
that-
God.
Hold on. Jason Martin and Ronnie Martin.
Oh, sorry. Ronnie is Joy
Jason
Electric.
Martin.
Jason
Ronnie
is
is
Starfire
Joy Electric, and
Okay,
Ronnie is
sorry.
like pastor
Yeah.
vibes.
So
like,
I was talking about Ronnie. I
Ronnie.
was talking about
Jason Starflyer
I
is
fucked
still
that up.
making Starflyer records and owns a trucking
Yes.
company and lives in Huntington Beach.
And
He owns a
new
trucking
albums.
company?
His albums are still good. Yeah,
Their
that's
dad
what
was
Drive
a
a Lot
so
is
good.
about.
Their dad was a long haul trucker, and they both were long haul truckers for a while. And Jason kept doing it, and then eventually started his own company and doesn't do the drive. My understanding is he doesn't do the driving anymore. But
Unbelievable.
Ronnie's like a full on pastor. He's got the like pastor photos of like him really happy with his wife, very well lit, like very well.
So
taken
Ronnie's Joy
photos.
Electric.
Ronnie's Joy Electric.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Ronnie.
And then there's
Jason is
the other
Starflyer.
brother's Starflyer.
Yeah.
Jason is
Jason.
Okay.
Starfire.
By the way,
Starflyer is significantly cooler than Joy Electric, unless it's Christmas songs. Joy Electric's
Yeah,
Christmas
true.
songs on Tooth and Nail Happy Christmas albums were always my favorite on those albums, even though I was
Oh,
only like
yeah.
moderately interested in Joy Electric. But the Happy Christmas Tooth and Nail albums, the first three, are not on Spotify. So, Dan, you're friends
I
with
have
the
one
people
of
that
them.
do the Tooth and Nail podcast.
I was just going to
You
mention
need to
it.
convince them to put them shits on Spotify, because last Christmas I was in Edinburgh and I don't have my CD collection. How am I
Okay.
supposed to have Christmas without the Happy Christmas volumes 1, 2, and 3?
I'll
It was
text Matt
like,
Carter.
it is
I'll
just
let 'em know.
depressing. If they have it,
Yeah.
I am happy to promote it in whatever way possible.
Okay.
The Happy Christmas volumes 1 and 2, greatest thing. 7-Day Jesus version of "Oh Holy Night's the greatest Christmas song of all time. Like 7-Day Jesus cover, "Oh Holy Night," best Christmas cover ever.
7 Day Jesus, The Hunger. I remember that record. I was just going to say that the Joy Electric episode of the labeled The Story of Tooth and Nail podcast is a fantastic episode. That my good
Oh, I
buddy,
have to check that out.
my
I will
good
have
buddy
to check
Ben
that out.
Bishop was the guest interviewer and did a fantastic job with Ronnie. Great one.
I
Okay.
was a huge, like, diehard Joy Electric fan. No joke.
Okay, Trip, round 5, your pick.
Oh, all right. I'm looking. Well, let's see. The one I have the least options for is Purity Culture Metaphor, because I didn't do it. I did
didn't grow up
sing
with
DC
it.
Talk songs at True Love Waits events, but I didn't attend stuff except this one year. And the metaphor, though, it's not going to immediately be effectual, like it's cauliflower. But let me just tell you what happened. I'm there using Sweet Tracks. You know what those are? They're like tracks with a CK, but with an X and an S, because it's CCM songs without the lyrics on it, rocking out all the evangelical purity culture songs you can handle. Well, I'm at this sex retreat for middle school boys and middle school girls, and it's at the beach, where
So you're
obviously,
at a sex retreat?
well, it's a True Love Waits retreat. But our youth group T-shirts that were handed out the retreat were purple and said, "Let's talk about sex" on it,
Oh, my God.
Oh my god.
and then had little
Very
thought
relevant.
bubbles with different issues. There was a special session after the beach Olympics where everyone's tired. You come back and now you're like hungry and stuff, and they have like snack boards out, but surprisingly this time it's like mostly vegetables. Not optimal for middle schoolers. It was cauliflower and like broccoli and carrots. Whatever. No one really wants to eat it. You're now in the session. Youth minister's wife comes out. Nurse. She has slides, like rotary slides of STDs, explaining to us the medical consequences of poor life decisions. And what happens? There's a picture before and after of gonorrhea. Now, I did not know this, being a 8th grader. that the gonorrhea looks like cauliflower all over your balls and nutsack and shaft. And then she said, and the consequences of sin are click. They burn it off with a laser.
No.
And on this giant screen, the cauliflower disappears for blistered and burnt skin. And everybody realized when the youth minister started giggling that he had served a large amount of cauliflower without other options, so that we all ate cauliflower prior to watching it get burnt off on a giant slide. And then right after that, I was supposed to sing I Don't Want It. And so purity culture image is cauliflower. Whether it's all natural or the burnt variety.
I don't understand. It's like, we're just going to scare the shit out of you. We're going to gross you out. And then you get married and it's great. Fun times, right? Like everything's cool.
So here's what's ridiculous about this is I got basically that same exact thing, but
Is that the cauliflower?
at my public middle school, which was like abstinence only education. So it wasn't like necessarily purity culture like evangelical, but we literally, I remember like sitting in our like band or choir room, all of us like 8th and 7th graders sitting around, seeing images of people who grew up in the same small, we grew up in a town of like 20,000 or less people who had STDs, and we got to see like their genitals with STDs. Like, and it wasn't like necessarily like you couldn't tell who was who or whatever. Like it was a small enough town where
the
if they were
was not maintained.
Like if they were of a certain ethnicity, you knew who they were.
No,
it was that small of town.
No,
yeah, that's all I'm trying to say. So it's funny that you got that at church. I got that at public middle school.
Wait, where did you grow up, Mason? What
South Dakota.
Well, that's basically a homeschool, right?
Basically.
Homestead school.
Homestead school. Laura
Okay.
Ingalls Wilder.
I'm gonna go with my fifth pick. I'm going with youth group ritual or icebreaker because no one has broken the ice yet on this category. And I was struggling between two of these particular items, but I'm going to go with the one that was more formative for me in my life, and that is massage circles on youth group trips.
What the fuck?
Okay, you know what I'm talking about? Where like you're like sitting cross-legged, and you do it's like a conga line, and you massage, and then you turn around and you massage the other person's back or whatever. Have you never
with like everyone?
Yeah, co-ed.
I've never heard this.
So this mostly happened in my evangelical high school. We did a trip once a year to like a cabin, but Jaffrey was saying earlier that they had sort of like winter trips in her youth group as well, and they did this. So I don't think I'm crazy. Maybe it's a West Coast thing, and it never would have happened elsewhere. But I grew up with this where it was like this was like, I don't know, a safe form of contact between people. I don't know why or maybe we just did it and nobody stopped us. But I gotta say that like that was some of the most, intimate person to person contact. Was just like this is like
you are annihilating my pick because I was just gonna say like holding hands during prayer.
Well, you should have come up with. I did encourage you to come up with 2 or 3 options.
Well,
I feel like what I would always do is I would just focus a lot on the lower back and sort of the waist region, and a lot less on shoulders, because this was it. This was my Indy 500 as an evangelical 14-year-old. Was like I get, 4 minutes of giving Natasha a back rub. And this is like the best thing I've got going for me in the next few months or 6 months or 9 months. This may be a little TMI and indicting myself as a horny teenager, but That's my pick for youth group ritual or icebreaker. Massage circles on youth group trips.
Oh, I mean, did the rest of y'all ever have that?
Trip, you had to go use the restroom or whatever, but apparently no. Did you have that?
Yeah, but
Okay.
I was also at a theater school for middle school and high school, so massage circles weren't nearly as weird as some of the weird art exercises you do with your body if you're like the only conservative Christian in the group, you know?
Right.
Yeah. But
I feel like this pick kind of fell flat a little bit, so I'm going to just move on.
I completely get it, Dan. I get it. You have vivid memories to this day of rubbing people's shoulders slowly yet
Mostly
firmly.
lower backs. Yeah. I literally can still remember it. That's how formative it was, apparently. Okay, but moving on from my awkward teenage sexual past, my 6th round pick. I'm choosing between Christianese phrase and Christian equivalent of secular band. I'm going to save secular band because I think I have a really good one that no one will pick, and I'm the last pick of the whole game. So I think let's end that with a good one.
Oh.
So I'm going to go Christianese phrase, how's your walk? How's your walk? I don't know if everybody else experienced this one, but this is from age 12 to 25. One of the, this was the, like, if you could say 3 words to tell me what kind of a person you are, how's your walk might be the most efficient use of language.
How is your walk?
It's a really good.
Don't do that to me. Don't lay that trick on me, Sarey.
Triggering.
Don't trigger me like that.
I really feel like
pop-up on our
literally typed in "Are you deconstructing.com" and that's how my walk is.
So you're deconstructing.com. Mason, get it right.
So you're deconstructing.com. We have a pop-up when you get to the site. It just says, how's your walk?
It says, how's your walk? Want to chat with one of us right now? We'd like to send you notifications. We'd like to use your location. Man, fuck websites these days. I just want to look something up. I don't want 3 questions. Okay. Anyway, how's your walk? I just think those 3 words say more. They pack more of a subcultural punch than almost any 3 words in the English language.
Well, what if you started a record label and you only had 5 minutes to come up with a name?
Okay, Trip.
And you called it 5 Minute Walk.
5 Iron Frenzy. I get it.
5 Minute Walk was a record label, Dan.
I know, and they had 5 Iron. Yeah.
I know, but they also had other bands.
Small Town Poets.
Yeah.
For instance.
And
Guarding Your Heart record label. No, there was not.
That's true. There was no Guarding Your Heart record label.
If only there was a Holy Tetons label.
Holy Tetons.
God's titties.
As a 90-year-old man, Holy Tetons is a pretty elite one-liner.
Yeah, and the man's never drank before too. Like, he came to beer camp, and then at one point I asked John, I was like, John, like, I know you are a very committed Wesleyan, but like, if you were just gonna like sip and did it here, that would be like the coolest thing ever. And he said, Trip, if I was just going to have a sip and did it with you, I would ask you to keep that story silent the rest of your life. And I know that would be a burden too high for you to bear. And I was like, that's actually true. So I'm just going to retell this story.
Yeah, you definitely could not have kept it a secret.
I would have just said, so one time I was hanging out, drinking with JC for his first time. And they'd be like, you haven't hung out with Jesus Christ. I was like, no, the real one. John Cobb.
Hashtag John Cobb. Okay, Sarey or Trip, you're up next. What's your 6th round pick?
Oh, it's my turn? I'm very prepared. I was thinking about it. No, I'm going to go. I know you think no one's going to pick this when it goes to the music equivalent, Dan. But there's only one like Willy Wonka level golden ticket or the
Okay.
musical equivalent when it goes to Christian band as is to secular band. And that is because it is the only connection between the two where you actually have at an ontological level the hypostatic union. And we all know as
I can't
good
wait.
old confessional Orthodox Christians, the hypostatic union is Greek metaphysical mythology in which two substances can occupy the same space at the same time in a non-competitive way. Why? Because the person of Jesus is fully God and fully human. And you say to yourself, is that possible? Is this a paradox? What's going on? And the church says, no. Hypostatic union. So when you ask the question,
And Tripp goes, read my new favorite book.
yeah, divine self-investment, a constructive, open, and relational Christology. But when you think of the hypostatic union, that is secular and sacred music, there's only one band who is simultaneously fully secular and fully sacred.
I know
There's
who
only
you're gonna say.
one band
Right.
who is able to mount the crescendo of
Creed.
two simultaneous mountains of excellence, and that is 777 Striper, the Bible thumping bumblebees motherfucker. They dominate this category. They are simultaneously the greatest metal band and the greatest metal band. They are
Hard pass.
simultaneously heavy metal and heavens metal. They are the ones that originated high quality harmonic shredding guitar solos where Oz Fox with his Jerry curled long hair is going
Oh.
but Michael Sweet an octave higher is going in exact same time while Robert Sweet is on the drum set. 21 drums, 21 cymbals, black with lines of yellow tape across the whole thing. Why 21? Because it's Christian. Also, why that many cymbals and drums? Because it's heavy metal.
What's 21? How's that
Hypostatic
Christian?
union. Why is 21?
7 times 3?
Yeah, the Trinity times perfection, Dan. This is why Sherwood did not become the first band like Striper to have 3 songs on MTV's top 10 at one time. What was the
Oh my
first band to
gosh.
do that? Striper. How did they do that?
Did not know that.
Okay, early days of MTV. Okay,
Yeah,
when
but
there
you
weren't
want to know what else?
there were very few videos to play.
Yeah, but there's only one band that's done it. There's only one
Okay.
band that's
What
done it.
about-
We've only
I
had a
just-
solo
what about-
artist do it. The two options, Striper, Rihanna. But you know what Striper has that Rihanna doesn't do? 4 people that look good in spandex.
Spandex.
Oh,
Spandex B costumes.
Yeah.
I just want,
Yeah.
just so everyone knows, all of the rest of us were waving our hands no, and just waiting for Tripp to finish. Mace, go ahead.
Can I just add? So I interviewed Michael Sweet. I do another podcast where I do music interviews. So I interviewed
Yes.
Michael
HM.
Sweet
HM.
from Striper, because I'm partnered with HM. I interviewed Michael Sweet. I'll just say, and I'm not going to add anything else. Michael Sweet voted for Donald J.
Oh,
That's
You know-
all I got to add.
Mason, don't.
That's all I got to add. If that ultimately is your decision for voting for Tripp for all of his draft picks,
Yes, I
I'm
love
just
this.
wanting to add.
I love
Michael
this.
Sweet voted for Donald J. Trump. Just saying.
Voters, when you choose who has
Oh my
the best
God.
team, a vote for Tripp is a vote for Trump. Remember that at the polls. Remember that at the polls.
Trump, you gotta know who I've interviewed. You gotta know who I've
No,
interviewed.
I know, and I also want to just say this, that I don't try to essentialize people to one little part of their life. And that's just not how I roll. And so I've intentionally never interviewed Michael Sweet on the podcast because I knew I'd be disappointed.
Yeah.
But you know,
Good
one
call.
of the gifts you get when you go to amazing websites like y'all's, like about deconstructing, is you get the opportunity to cultivate a second naivete. Now, Mason, I know that you're still struggling with doing this, but
He's
what
still on the
I've
first. Yeah.
well, yeah, I know. Well, no, he's in the desert of criticism. That's why he is kind of like really coarse sandpaper to beautiful things, theologically speaking.
Oh, that's the best description of Mason's Twitter account I've ever heard.
I know.
Coarse sandpaper.
Yeah, and it's not a criticism. It's just an identification of where he is. But see, when you cultivate a second naivete, as Paul Ricoeur describes, it's not that you return to things with the same type of naivete. You just recognize through a cultivated hermeneutic the way to experience the beauty that's present. And yet Michael Sweet is still in a rather naive Costa Mesa style, SoCal, OC evangelicalism.
It's the worst kind of Trump voter anti-mask wear.
It's horrible.
The Orange County one. That's the
It's
worst
horrible.
kind.
Like we don't like, but that's not
A
new
vote
news.
for Trump. Or
Like,
vote for Trip is a vote for Trump.
But
A vote
the
for Trump is a
question
vote for
is,
Trump.
what I really hear going on right now is that Mason is testifying to something most podcast listeners may not know, that I've cultivated such a deep gratitude and compassion in my life that I can even affirm conservative Christians have a deep love for Trump because despite their theological commitments, they shred for the Lord. You know,
because to hell with the devil.
Trip,
Yes.
1,200 episodes is not going to do it. 1,200 episodes is not going to do it, Trip. I don't care what you've said in 1,200 episodes.
Guys,
A vote for Striper is a vote for Trump.
I understand a West Virginia coal miner voting for Trump. I understand a out of work Rust Belt auto factory worker voting for Trump. You show me a fucking bougie Orange County white man with a $1.3 million home value voting for Trump. I say to you, fuck you, sir. Please read some more and learn. I can't do it.
well, the problem with this is, Dan, how many Striper songs do you know the lyrics of?
I was going to say this actually because I would like to move the conversation away from Striper.
Well, I'm
I
sorry.
thought
You just were
when you
being
were
very
saying-
derogatory to a well-meaning, intentioned Orange County Christian, and I, as someone who occasionally gets to tell you that you're just being like too leftist and judgmental, and you
don't get to say that to me very often. That's true.
I don't know. I just feel like I might want to say it right now.
Okay, you can. I
and
opened myself up to it.
Also, are you surprised that a band whose second album, the first album where they had multiple songs on the MTV Top 10, was titled "Soldiers Under Command"?
How many
was
minutes
a
of
Trump
this
supporter?
episode have we dedicated to the band Striper? That's the
Not
question I have.
enough. Not enough.
I thought you were going to say Switchfoot, like they're the band that did both.
No,
And I
that was
think
the
that's
goal,
accurate.
was to describe Switchfoot and then say
I
Striper.
see.
You don't understand.
However-
Like, I thought about this. I originally thought
I know
Switchfoot
you
was
did.
going to make the hypostatic union joke.
I know
And
you
then-
did.
And then I said to myself, do I want to do the hypostatic union? And then I said, what if I said Michael W. Smith? And then when you said, what secular success did he have? And I say, everyone with religious baggage knows. And I start singing Friends of Friends Forever. That was one part. And then you say, well, I don't know if everyone has it. And I would say, yeah, but you don't know. They have a secret ambition. And then sing that song.
oh
And then
my
I decided
God.
that I was
you
going to
did
go for
really-
spandex
you
to set
thought
up for
about
the
this.
Rihanna joke. Because
Okay.
they have 4 guys that look good in spandex.
And she's just the one
Yeah,
woman.
It's not her fault.
Just one.
but if she
here's
wants
the
to
problem,
join-
Trip,
for
you
making
didn't.
me defend Dan Koch. Fuck you for making me defend Dan fucking Koch.
That's what you get. I tried to support your holy Tetons over there, Mason, but now this is I'm just going to try to guess what you're going to say and take it each time.
You have forced true blue liberation woke as fucked Mason to defend me, milk toast centrist moderate bullshit bougie white man Dan Koch, and that's what Striper brought to this podcast.
He likes billionaires, Trip.
I think billionaires have some ideas. That's how low you've made Mason sink today.
Yeah, I mean
okay?
the ones they borrowed from Satan, and that's why you don't want 666 on your Marshall stacks. You want 777, like Striper.
Here's a technical problem, though, Trip. You did not actually give a Christian equivalent of a secular band. You just gave a band that is
Yeah,
both.
that's
So I will let-
hypostasis.
I really feel like
the
you're
voters decide.
you're
We'll let the voters
dismissing-
decide.
I'm super
You're-
hypostatic, if you ask me.
Well, what? No, it is because what is more
No, it's
secular
a heresy.
than having three top tens for the first
It is.
time on MTV?
Which heresy is that? Which heresy is that? That's not hypostatic. That's
No, the hypostatic
Fun.
union is the
Fun.
I
affirmation.
don't
Wait
think
a minute.
it's the one where it's like you change like you become ice and then water and then vapor.
Oh, right.
That's
the-
modalism.
Modalism.
Yeah, I think it might be modalism.
Oh, it's
Striper is-
modalism. Good,
It's not
Sarey.
modalism.
All right. Well, moving
Modalism,
on.
Patrick.
Sarey, what is your round 6 pick? We've spent enough time on fucking Striper. Yeah.
Youth group icebreaker, playing sardines. Do you guys know the game Sardines?
Ooh,
That's all.
sardines. No.
It's like you're having a lock-in and it's like hide and go seek opposite. So one person hides, everybody looks for them, but when you find them, you hide with them.
Yes, right.
And then
That's
you're like
good.
a bunch of sardines and it's kind of sexy. Because you're like
As 15 years in youth
Hiding.
ministry, I can tell you that I know teenagers have told a particular person in the youth group where they were going to sardine so that they could have
Yes.
extended periods of
Oh,
one-on-one
yes.
time.
Their
Before
own
someone
creating
else
I
their
does.
own
was
7
just
minutes
going
in
to
heaven.
say.
Go ahead, Mason. You're going to say that was the plan.
I was just gonna say, if you're typing boobs into Wikipedia at youth group, you know where you're gonna hide at in sardines.
Yes. All right. Well, Mason, it's now your turn. You have the end of round 6 and the beginning of the final round 7. You have 2 picks.
Okay, so if I'm right, I just need a youth group icebreaker or ritual, and a sexual Bible verse.
Yes,
which
those are your
I'm
last
pretty
2.
confident.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty confident about my sexual Bible verse, and I'm pretty confident that I'll do quite well on that.
Let's hear it.
So, sardines was my second choice, Sarey.
That's
So,
great.
second choice, but it was up there. I totally agree. I've done some things in sardines that, when I was my youth group Mason, I would have regretted. But I don't know if there was a more classic youth group ritual / icebreaker than egg blow. Even Rachel Held Evans in her very, very popular Searching for Sunday even
I love
talked
the
about
scholarly reference. Yes.
it's not like I haven't done my research for this.
I love it.
Even
Yes.
Rachel Held Evans, rest in peace, beloved Rachel Held Evans,
Hero.
even said or talked about her experience with egg blow. Now, if you don't know what egg blow is, you have a tube between two people
Yes.
and you put an egg in there, and whoever ends up sucking up that egg because you're blowing so hard ends up losing. And so the victor is the one who blows hard enough. Now, forget
that's
about
also
all
a vote
the-
for Trump. Go ahead. Sorry.
forget about all the phallic humor in that. There is no more iconic youth group game than egg blow. I mean,
love it.
It's disgusting. It's phallic. It's all the things that youth group gets epitomized into one game. Egg blow, right there. That's all you got.
That's
Sardines
so
is
good.
great though.
I had my backup was Chubby Bunny, which is how many marshmallows you can put in your mouth and still say Chubby Bunny. Egg blow is like Chubby
That's a great
Bunny
one too.
elite version, though. That's a better, same category, but a better pick.
I'm sorry, I never played this game. What kind of tube are we talking about?
Like a plastic, like a beer bong tube, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it sits in
Cool.
the middle, and then
Basically,
you have
yeah.
to start, and then whoever can blow it into the other
Okay.
person's mouth, then they get the other person's breath and a raw egg in their mouth, and it's disgusting.
That's
and fantastic.
disgusting.
Yeah.
If you were ever a tuba player and know how to do circular breathing, you can beat everybody.
Exactly.
And if you were a youth minister like myself, you could offer people $50 if they ever beat you, and then just slaughter them all night long at a lock-in, and they all get tired and then go to bed because you're just like, there's zero chance you're going to beat my circular breathing tuba self.
That's good. Hey, Mason, before we move on to your last pick, I forgot to say this when I chose my youth group ritual, but I wanted to shout out because my wife and I were in a small group for 6 or so years, and our friend Scott was trying to name it with like the best evangelical youth group name he could find. And he actually found this online, and we actually referred to our group as this for many years. We called it Barf and Gag, which stood for Boys After Radical Faith and Girls After God.
Oh my God.
He found that online, and we were like, hey guys, so at Barf and Gag on Wednesday, like it became our thing for many, many years, and I just think that deserves a shout out.
You're right.
If Haley Williams isn't still a Christian after that, I don't know what Haley Williams would be a Christian for.
It's true. It's true.
All right, Mason, round 7, final round, your first pick.
Okay, so my final round, and honestly, I feel pretty confident about this one. It might be unknown, but it might be the best sexual Bible verse out there in the Bible. Pretty unknown, though. And that is, maybe it's not super unknown, but it maybe, who knows. It is Song of Songs, chapter 7, verse 2. The verse goes, your navel is a rounded goblet that never lacks blended wine. Your waist is a mound of wheat encircled by lilies.
I'm being encircled by willies.
The reason why I bring this up, the reason why I bring this up is, I just got to say, Trip Fuller, when is the last time your navel has been described as a goblet? And was it last night?
Well, I have a significant innie.
Me too.
But also have quite a bit of hair, so
chunky dudes, we have big innies.
But it doesn't.
It is kind of goblet-like.
Yeah, except that the hair holds, residue from your undershirt, and so it's not so goblety as much as.
It's more like a bog.
Yeah,
it's like there's water and there's seaweed coming up.
Don't some people think that's a bad interpretation, and it's actually a vagina that he's talking about?
You think, Sarey?
It's for sure a vagina.
Oh, okay. Would this be a good time to bring in my second choice, which is also from Song of Songs? I think it is
Is it about drinking from fountains?
This is the time. Song of Songs 5:4. My beloved put his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved for him. Now, there's two options here. One is there's an actual door, and it's got like a peephole in it, and that she's looking at her beloved. The other option is, of course, that the hole of the door, which is connected to the bowels,
I think we know.
Either a vagina or a butthole with a bunch of nerve endings in it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a boy interpretation.
Is it?
No,
I think it's
serious?
liberative. It's liberative.
I think it's
Sarey, who is it that edited the Bible?
Ezra?
No, we all know that it was definitely a bunch of guys editing this.
We're not 100%.
But we're pretty solid that it was a dude, right?
Right. And the woman is central in Song of Songs. So he'd be like, "Oh, what does she want?"
Yeah, but
it's
kind of like it's kind of like the woman in
she wants me to touch her butthole. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, buttholes do have a lot of nerve endings. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's
shocker for life and stuff.
Okay.
Is that really all you're saying, Dan?
Come on.
That is all I'm saying.
I see. I thought you were going to go for that one in chapter 4 where he talks about blowing on his garden.
That's a good one too. Yeah, blowing on the garden. Yeah.
And you're
Okay.
like, well, what garden?
I think we got Mason's picks. Sarey, your final pick.
My final, because we're here in this point of the conversation, I just want to share that my backup for sexual Bible verse, honorable mention, was the sin of Onan in Genesis 38:9, which is Onan knew the child would not be his, so whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he spilled semen on the ground to keep from providing offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord put him to death.
Yeah, that's a
Big
that
sames.
that's been with me for many years. Big sames. All right,
honestly,
Sarey, what's
the ground?
Okay,
Come
my
on.
worst for last, because I
Worst
didn't
for
have
last.
purity.
I
I didn't have
saved a
purity
good one.
culture
Yeah, okay.
metaphors, really. My purity culture metaphor game is weak. So all I had was really like the purity ring, because it was like, a symbol of like the virginity that would be the gift to your future spouse. And
the ring. Yeah.
it would be, and you wear the ring as like, it's almost like your wedding ring to
Promise ring. It's a promise
into the
ring,
future.
right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
purity
It's like
ring,
your commitment to the person you don't know yet.
I think I had one. I can't
That's
remember
not
for sure.
creepily given by your dad, by the way. It's not like your dad literally gives you a promise ring, essentially.
It's on behalf of the Lord, Mason. It's on behalf of the Lord.
There are various more or less creepy versions of the purity ring, depending on the role of the dad, I think. But I had one. My mom didn't give it to me. I chose it or something. I went to some True Love Waits conference one time, I remember, and I was like, yeah, I'll get a ring. But that was before I knew, okay, we'll just move on. That's fine.
Are you sure you want to move on? Because
Yes,
I feel
I'm
like
sure I want to
we were
move
about
on.
to get to a breakthrough.
No, there's no breakthrough. I want to share my honorable mention purity culture illustration while we're here, which is the Oreo putting the Oreo and saying, hey, who wants to eat this Oreo? And everyone's, it's a clean Oreo. That's great. Then you put it on the ground, everybody spits on it. And then you hold it back up, maybe with gloves, and you say, now who wants to eat it? Is like so disgusting.
Yeah, but
it's the
Oreo
same
filling,
thing as
I
all the
mean.
other ones.
what's funny is when I was in 6th grade, I got talked into being in this skit at our Advent dinner theater where like 5 guys from youth group all brush their teeth using the same cup of water, and then I brushed my teeth with it and drank it, which is significantly worse than eating an Oreo someone spit on.
I would do shit like that too. I would do anything for a dare. I ate a fly once.
Yeah,
I touched a poop once.
But did you need a crowd? Because here's my thing is like, if I only have like 3 or 4 people there, not going for it. But if I'm like, everyone here will tell the story to their friends of something Trip did that they thought was ridiculous. But I'm like, the volume here, it could get tweeted about, talked about. So I'm just gonna go for this. Not sure that's like a healthy quality to have in your life, but I definitely will escalate the right situation. Sometimes it backfires.
I definitely would back in the day.
All right, Trip, give us your
Dan,
give us your last pick.
No, Dan, I need you to tell me. Okay, so I did carbon data mollusk, get the golden dildo, God is in control, cauliflower, hypostatic striper. What
are you missing? Which
theological idea and icebreaker?
Okay, maybe you didn't get your 2.
Maybe we skipped him once.
We might have skipped you, so you're going to get 2 picks right now. We'll make sure you get all your picks.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I mean, I'm not surprised if I forgot I said something, but none of the things that were for these are clicked off of my options. You know what I mean?
You're probably right. So we must have skipped over you, which is definitely possible with the 9% beer that I have been imbibing throughout the process. That's definitely
and you also got a lot of talk time. You got a lot of like lobbying.
You basically filibustered every time you gave a
that
pick.
is true, but
so we might have been kind of ready to move on.
No.
You were silencing me after the striper hypostatic union, which is a perfect analogy to the classical Christianity.
That's true.
And y'all just fail to resist. You just keep resisting.
Yes. Okay.
All right. So
let's wrap it up.
Okay. Icebreaker at youth group or youth group game is Romans versus Christians. This is a game where there's a whole bunch of people that are labeled Romans, others that are Christians. and the Romans are trying to kill the fucking Christians, because what is more important to cultivate in American evangelical, especially white churches, youth groups? Persecution complex. That's right. This game is so horrible. It not only has competitive logic, it not only normalizes murder of the other, it, on top of that, it justifies the most worst trope of white American evangelicalism. And there's a ton of them, right? But the worst is that they always think that they're the victims, even though they're occupying vaginas in every minority in the country. And they're just like, yeah, we're basically the martyrs, you know? And then they start like posting videos of them shits giggling about Biden losing. Like this, the Romans versus Christian thing's worst game to play. And I didn't know it existed, right? And I was a youth minister, and I was at a youth retreat, and they were like explaining this game. And I like had this moment where I said, there's absolutely nothing about this game that I'm comfortable in my youth playing. And imagine being 6 other youth ministers and there are 400 kids at a lock-in. And then Tripp, the edgy youth minister, but the ecumenical one who organized the whole thing, walks over to the youth minister planning games and goes, hey, I'm like deeply theologically and morally opposed to this game. And it goes to this whole discussion, and I'm just like, you could just call it something different. and he has no idea. He's like, you what? I was like,
yeah, you could. It does. You could just anything, right?
Yeah, just
barbarian Romans and barbarians. It's the same game.
But see, I figure this is a great example for evangelicalism because somehow Fox's Book of Martyr connected to the Jesus Freak album of DC Talk.
Oh,
and then they rebranded
my final pick.
They rebranded the Jesus Freak album, put the label of the album on the Fox's Book of Martyrs. And what did they add to it? What did they add to it?
What?
Columbine victims that actually their stories ended up not being true.
No,
was going to add that's like the last like frontier of persecution complex.
No, I didn't know about this.
Yeah,
now don't be clear. Let me be clear. I had the DC Talk Fox's Book of Martyrs. I had the Jesus Freaks book in paperback, but I don't remember this particular aspect of it. But I had a copy.
No, neither do I.
I experienced this at a Billy Graham revival at Charlotte Coliseum, and between DC Talk playing and Michael W. Smith before Billy Graham took the stage was this high school student from Columbine who comes out, and they like did their like martyrs, Jesus Freak, blah 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 blah, into how like one of her friends, they were like, do you believe in God? Like, yeah, and they shot him. Didn't happen. It didn't happen. And now like and I've talked to a minister who was minister of 7 or 8 of the kids in that room, like the perk of a podcast. You mention a story and then people that were related to it text you or email you. It's completely fabricated. And then I made a joke about this one time. Alicia, my wife, unrelated, like we weren't connected at this point in time. She's like, oh no, we had a whole youth group lock-in about like, would you admit you believed in God if there was a gunner?
I remember this.
They in the lock-in, they had a adult person volunteer come in with a mask and a gun unloaded and scare them all.
This is literally one of the categories of religious and spiritual abuse that I am trying to measure in my dissertation research.
So you're saying that that's not a wonderful preparatory moment for the proclamation of the gospel?
Besides centrism, Mason? No, Tripp. No, using terror or horror to motivate religious decisions is one of the categories of religious abuse that I'm looking at.
So would you call that the Gibson effect?
I don't.
Mel Gibson, Passion of the Christ. Oh, come on.
No, I wouldn't.
You're not a real evangelical if you didn't get that, Dan.
That's not what I
have to be like super anti-Semitic about it, or what?
It wasn't him; it was his dad.
I don't think that portraying the gospel accounts of the crucifixion counts as. showing the Passion of the Christ to a 7-year-old to motivate a salvation decision would count, but seeing it as an adult would not count. Making the film would not count.
It reminds me of those Halloween, like haunted houses that are like just a trip into hell.
Yes, those are an example. Yeah, right. But it's that one's harder to measure because it's sort of about developmental appropriateness, which is just sort of difficult. Anyway, we don't have to talk about research in and outs, and I'm like 4 drinks in, so let's not.
Best time to do
all
it.
right, Trip, I think you have one more
They
pick.
were also pretty good. Like, honestly, those Halloween haunted houses were great.
They're very good in terms of how scary the haunted house is.
How scary, yeah.
Real good production value.
Fun fact, you know the what was the Hell House? The traveling theater production of it. I had never seen it until I went back when I was dating Alicia to her family's church, and my father-in-law was playing Satan in the production. But I found out later that the guy that ran it, he was a Elvis impersonator in Las Vegas after he lost his faith. The guy that ran the whole Hell House traveling theater production.
Gosh.
He lost his faith,
Like,
became an Elvis impersonator, and did weddings as Elvis.
No, I'm going to turn it into a movie, actually.
Oh, no, that's a high-quality story.
That is a good
That's
script idea.
like an Oscar winner, yeah.
Okay, Trip, let's get your final pick.
All right, so Mason is he's the most newbie of this relationship. So Mason, when it goes to theological idea that you got you were just like overjoyed about, super stoked when you learned it existed. I'm kind of hung up right now. Is it related to the suffering of God or that Jesus wanted to stick it to empire? Which one should I go with?
I mean, nothing's going to be God titties, so I don't know.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying, is that I had a very gradation on my options. It was the Holy Tetons, and then it was like a list of others.
Well,
and I'm trying to...
I think you should do your empire one, because I feel like you have certain soapboxes, and you've been on most of your own personal soapboxes.
We haven't heard about empire yet.
We haven't heard about empire
it's like
yet.
in the midst of the election.
And Mason has had 7 chances to talk about empire and the liberative power of Christ against the economic destruction of the powerful, and he has failed to preach that gospel. Trip, it is on you. Your last chance.
What's nothing more? What talks about against that nothing more than God's titties? Are you kidding me?
I mean,
Nothing's more
Gosh, stop
socialist than
saying
God's
that.
titties.
I find the lure of the divine access points, like very luring. And so I'll just say this: when I was in college, or just kicked off college, was when 9/11 happened, and the response of the religious community to be so nationalistic, militaristic, and proclaim blind allegiance to invading a country that had very little to do with 9/11 drove me up a wall. And I remember over the course of Lent, my sophomore year, going like, God, at some point in this time, I have to decide if I even want to be connected to your shit. I don't know like how well you thought you did in revealing yourself, but it sucks. Like literally the highest amount of the human population and number wise that ever protested one thing was the invasion of Iraq. And what happened? The same 81% that was like, hell yeah, white supremacy Trump 2 times. We're like, that's right. Come on, W. Blah, 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 blah. Got some trains with the powder and shit. And that thing drove me up a wall. Like not just the non-rationality about it. It was that Christians shouldn't even be suspicious of imperial power. So in the middle of that, where I'm like a post-structuralist philosophy major at this point, so I've deconstructed all sorts of shit. And I'm like, why would I even associate with this? And then there's social science reasons you might want to locate yourself in a wisdom tradition. And I'm playing back and forth. And I read Richard Horsley's Jesus and Empire book. And there's a section in it where he plays out the render to God. Richard Horsley, like Horsely, I think. Jesus and Empire, New Testament scholar, also wrote like People's History. I'm too inebriated to remember multiple of his books, but if I was in my office, I would just point to a line. Anyway, New Testament scholar. And he brought together a whole bunch of, not just in historical Jesus studies, there was like, oh shit, Jesus is Jewish, which was a good thing to remember. But also, he was in the Second Temple period Judaism, where there's an imperial domination system that has found ways to to turn religious structures and mythologies into the means by which its imperial domination system functions. And one of the passages in it where I'm like reading it and wrestling with it, going like, oh, is Jesus this awesome? Like, could I still be a Christian because he's sticking it to empire and stuff? And it gets to the passage of when Jesus says, in response to getting questioned by like a religious leader, like, will you pay taxes? And he goes, well, give me a coin. And then Jesus' response is, after he pulls it out, is render to Caesar what Caesar's and God's what is God's. And then Horsley just like says, here's a picture of a coin. And then you're like, I don't know what language this is. And he's like, translation is a picture of Caesar, and it says Caesar, son of God. Now, all of a sudden, when Jesus says whose image and whose name or whose title is on it, all of a sudden in reply is, well, Caesar, son of God. Well, do they say that? No. They go, whose name and whose title? Is like just Caesar. They don't say the son of God part. So when Jesus says, render to Caesar what Caesar's and God's what's God's, he's looking at people who have internalized the logic of empire into their religious identity and demanded the separation of church and state as if it's a mythology that can overcome complicity with domination system and imperial destruction. He's looking at them and saying, like, if you read the whole thing, answer this question, son. And what do? They don't read it. Render to Caesar what Caesar's and God what's God. The only correct answer for a high-quality Jewish monotheist is everything's God's. Now, when I heard that, I realized that Jesus would have not looked at his Christian neighbor who's going, I think there's a semi-reasonable reason we should invade Iraq, and think, well, I think we should compromise. We don't want it to get awkward on Sunday. He would just look at them and say, we're in different religions. And after that moment, I realized I could still be a Christian, because I don't think remaining a Christian and thinking you have to internalize into the logic of the gospel militarism, nationalism, silence on the pillaging of the planet and the poor is viable. And what was striking to me when I learned about the historical Jesus and his confrontations of the principalities and powers was that all of a sudden, these deep yearnings I had within me as a Christian, I had an ally in Jesus. And then these confessions, these theological commitments I had, that Jesus was the image of the invisible God, the revelation or the embodiment of the internal reason and logic and wisdom of the world. All of a sudden, Jesus became an ally of my deconstruction of Southern American evangelicalism. And so, like, there's nothing that turned me on more other than the Holy Tetons than finding out that the kingdom of God was not the kingdom of Caesar, because the kingdom of God drops the G, and when you drop the G out of the kingdom, you get rid of the cock and the crown, because patriarchy and hierarchy suck balls, demon balls.
Yeah, well, in dropping the balls, you end up picking up opportunism, and you totally opportunize 9/11. Are you kidding me, Trip? You're just gonna you're gonna use the opportunity of 9/11? Come on.
Whole chapter on it in my first book, Homebrewed Christianity Guide to Jesus. You can all check it out on the internet. Leave a 5-star review.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Look, I did not anticipate you stealing the Tetons. You're a Teton stealer, Mason.
I liked that. That was a good move.
You know what? Nothing more than I like than God's titties.
Okay.
Sarey has asked you many times.
That's not like feminist.
If you are really a feminist, dude, you will listen to the one woman on the group.
I'm reclaiming it, Dan.
You're reclaiming titties for feminism while a woman asks you to stop saying it?
This is really a second wave, third wave conflict.
This is a fourth.
This is fifth wave. This is fifth wave.
This is chill. This is a chill feminism chill wave conflict. Okay, I have the last pick here as we desperately try to wrap things up. I've saved this, and I should have said it earlier because I just was waiting till I used this category, which is the Christian equivalent of a secular band. I sent you all a website, and I just want to tell the listeners this because I found this in looking up, examples other than what I could remember from my youth group days. And the website is still there. It is extreme-youth.com, and the entire list is in Comic Sans font. And I couldn't believe it was real. I am really having a hard time choosing between my top two picks. I will say before I choose that MXPX on this website was listed as a secular band that Christian bands might sound like, which I thought was great. I thought that was great. This guy is so Christian that MXPX is a secular band. Okay. So I think I'm going to go with...
so many categories, too.
Can I just say something I noticed?
Let's talk about the site a little bit.
Rebecca St. James, and then it says Alanis Marissa is spelled so wrong. It says Mafaseft. Alanis, it's like Kofifi. It's Alanis Mafaseft.
Kofifi.
Comma, Pollicle.
Pollicle. Yeah. It's incredible. Some of them, it's a fairly lazily written site. Some of them, like Jars of Clay, just says million selling alternative band. It doesn't give any other bands. He's just like, fuck you if you don't like them. They sold 1 million records. It's Jars of Clay.
Amazing.
It's Jars of Clay. So, okay, I'll give, because I have to give a pick for people to vote. And then I'll give my second runner-up. My pick is, you'll like Newsboys if you like Savage Garden and Chumbawamba. I just could not believe that one. Here's my runner-up, which will not go into the official record. You'll like DC Talk if you like U2, Oasis, and Seal, as in Kissed by a Rose. Batman Forever soundtrack. Fly like an eagle. Fly like an eagle, Kissed by a Rose. I don't know what Seal has to do with DC Talk. Maybe the vocal stylings. Maybe this guy's prescient.
I definitely think they thought that Seal and Michael Tate are both black. I think that's the connection.
Yes, I bet you that's what it is.
Oh my gosh. My first job was at a family Christian bookstore when I was a teenager, and we had a chart up in the music department, and it was a Jesus Freak era DC Talk. Obviously, there's differences, but it had Radiohead next to them. I was like...
Radiohead DC Talk?
Yeah.
So the one that I thought of when I first thought of this category was, if you like Rage Against the Machine, you'll love Project 86.
Right, classic.
I always loved Rage and never got into Project 86. Let's do a really brief... just name them off. Honorable mentions if you've got anything left, and let's just go one person at a time, whatever you've got. So I got a couple honorable mentions. Theological idea I was most stoked to learn about. Progressive revelation, especially in my 20s. I think I've moved on from what this meant to me at the time, which was that the Bible records a progressive revelation of God, and it's nonetheless accurate. That gave me the chance to sort of try on some other ideas. Now I would just say the Bible was like wrong, and then it gets closer to right. And then another theological idea runner-up was atonement theories as illustrative of what God is like, as opposed to operative as what like happened in the world. I loved that, and Keith Ward was a big part of that for me. Christianese phrase, honorable mentions, hedge of protection, Sarey, so good. And then Father God, once per sentence in a group prayer setting. Yes. Although I still think, voters, you should remember how good popcorn prayer was. Those are my, that was all my, we'll go in reverse pick order. Those were my runners up. Tripp, you have any runners up that you should just, honorable mentions you want to just say real quick?
There's a Christianese phrase that one of my youth ministers would say all the time that drove me up a wall, but I don't have verification that this is universal. But he would just say things like, "I'm just doing life with Jesus."
Oh, doing life is top 5.
Oh, that's so Christianese.
It's top 5. That's doing life. I'm jealous I didn't think of that. Doing life or doing life together. Either version. Oh, I hate you for thinking of that one.
Yeah.
I also thought about when you are on like a camping trip and the youth minister ties your shoelaces to someone else's shoes, and then they throw them all in a tent and put a whole bunch of people in one tent with all the shoes tied together, and you can't leave till everyone has their own shoes back on. It's not funny, except for the fact that it's always funny when it happens.
That's like
it's
good.
a high
that's
quality
like a good lesson.
It is. It's in the Young Life game book.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah,
that's a good like
in the process metaphysics game book, right?
No, it does have a high quality. If I had picked all the categories, one was going to be like worship song with the most with the highest process available interpretation. Because
that's a funny
once you have a
category,
process metaphysic, you can interpret all sorts of songs. And we had a game on it in graduate. Obviously at Claremont, there were a lot of process people, and so we get loaded to play this game. And I had we had a tournament going on over the course of a semester, and I won with my 5-minute process sermon based on every move I make. And I was just like,
the most process song to ever exist.
Yeah, and then you're like, can a process song have such high quality hand motions? You didn't know it could, but it does.
Waves of mercy, waves of grace. Every move I make.
I see your face. Like, it is just like the interpenetration of cosmic Christ. You can't handle the shit, you know? And then the other one I was going to mention, and this is more like because it was set up for a funny story, but when I found out that there was a difference between Calvinism and hyper Calvinism, it saved my Calvinism for about 9 months. And
oh man,
I don't think the distinction's wonderfully helpful at this point, but I just remember because I was a member of the Caedmon's Call fan club, and I saw them all the time, and Derek Webb and I were having a discussion about this because we had both just read this book called Spurgeon and the Hyper Calvinist, and we were like, "Yeah, all the problems we have are about hyper Calvinists, not real Calvinists."
Hyper, right?
Yeah, not Piper, hyper. And it turns out that one of us became a process theologian, and the other became an atheist married to a worship singer.
I started a huge fight about Calvinism at my homeschool academy when I was 16 because I was such a hardcore Calvinist at 16. And I wrote a paper about it and presented it to my class. And then this other girl who was a little older than me, super pretty, and a pastor's daughter at like this local like mega church wrote this Arminianism paper. And I was so intimidated, and it started a huge conflict. And I ran into her years later, and I got all palm sweaty, and she like didn't even remember me.
Oh, but she's still a Calvinist?
Oh no, I was the Calvinist, Trip. I'm sorry, but I was, and she was the anti-Calvinist. And
she was like an Arminian.
She wrote the anti-Calvinism paper, and I was really intimidated by her, but my arguments were better.
You were like, smell my tulips.
Yeah, I have a tulip tattoo. Oh, there's a baby.
Because we've gone so long, Jaffrey had to bring Soren in, and now he's a part of the conversation for our last 5-10 minutes here.
I'm about to be in that position with my child as well. Oh my gosh, he looks so happy. Hi, Soren.
Hey, Soren, you want to say something? You want to say something?
Hi.
La 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 la.
Soren, have anything to say about existentialism?
What do you have to say about existentialism, bud?
Once he can learn to talk, you should say every time when you say, I'll see you later, and you say, no, you'll see me later if an anvil doesn't fall out of the sky and kill me.
My God.
Like,
Wow.
you got to start introducing him to Soren, the OG Soren, you know?
Abu.
I mean, that face could use some Soren Kierkegaard, by the way.
Yeah,
He's way too happy. He's way too well adjusted. He needs some Soren Kierkegaard.
And no sickness unto death.
He's just got the happiness unto life. It's just wellness unto life is his life. Okay, so let's wrap it up because I'm holding an 8-month-old. Sarey, any honorable mentions we should hear before we take off?
No, I just had kind of the usual stuff like Green Day and Goaty Hook and
Goaty Hook,
I love
that
Goaty
call. Oh, I was thinking Green Day Value Pack. That's another good
Value
one
Pack.
too. Yeah.
And then there's the
Only
whole
their first
triangulation there. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh, anything for Christianese phrases I had anything with like blood. Like I've been washed in the blood.
Oh, blood's good.
You know,
That's good.
Any of those like bloody phrases and.
What would you make the equivalent for plank eye? Because I love plank eye.
I was thinking about plank eye. I definitely saw this. I saw Soundgarden for plank eye at one point.
I thought Grammatrain for Soundgarden.
Gin Blossoms.
Oh, plank eye's harder than Gin Blossoms.
Yeah, they're harder than Gin Blossoms.
I saw Small Town Poets for Gin Blossoms.
Yeah, that's nice.
Thing on that website. Yeah.
Grammatrain is more Soundgarden.
Oh my gosh, Grammatrain.
Yeah, that might be right. Oh gosh. The funny thing is, like, Starflyer 59, there were a bunch of bands like My Bloody Valentine, but nobody who made those fucking posters knew about shoegaze music, so they would just not know who to put for Starflyer. Like, there were those bands.
It's okay. They thought Oasis was related to DC Talk.
Oasis, DC Talk is so good. All right, Mason, anything you left off your list that we should just honorable mention?
Yeah, I got a couple. So probably least well known, but for a purity culture metaphor, I don't know why. Maybe it wasn't universal, maybe it wasn't. But my youth pastor constantly talked about a purity culture metaphor as like waiting for pizza to cool down. Like you would like warm up a pizza. What? Yeah, like you would warm up a pizza, and if you like bit into the pizza like right as you took it out of the oven, then it's like it's too hot. It's too hot. Like you're gonna burn your tongue. But if you like wait for it, then it's a really
that makes it sound like the sex is really. That sounds like the sex is too hot.
Yeah, like
I want to be burned.
Blow your mind.
Burn me, pastor.
Well, what if it was? What if it's actually like genuine wisdom that if you, as a male, are overly aggressive and try to speed things up and just like shove it in your mouth real quick, that then you don't have reciprocal appreciation for the physical encounter, and that like you can't go rocket style, you got to go airplane style and like slowly take off. You got to have like this reciprocal relation. If you don't let the cheese cool, then both partners don't experience.
That would have been a better way. That would be a better way to do it, but I don't think that's what Mason's youth pastor meant.
I don't think that's at all what my youth pastor was saying.
He wasn't trying to differentiate the nature of temporality for male and female orgasms?
No, he wasn't. All right, Mason, keep going.
I don't think so at all. So the other couple ones, when Paul technically says shit in Philippians 3:8, I don't even know, like I didn't take Greek. I only took Hebrew in college, so I don't even know how to say it in Greek.
You didn't even read Augustine in seminary.
Yeah, like whatever. Yeah, and I didn't read Augustine in seminary, so I have no idea how to say it in Greek. But anyway, Paul says shit in Philippians 3:8, which I think was, mind blowing. It made me basically be able to say fuck, because shit is the same thing as fuck.
That's good.
Christianese. The other one, Christianese, I can't believe no one ever mentioned this. Maybe it's just like my own, like the fact that I'm like borderline millennial / Gen Z, but watered down. Like I got so much like shit for like, that is a watered down message that like, especially from like the John Piper hyper Calvinist realm.
Your watered down is our lukewarm. Is that right?
Yeah. Like I got lukewarm too, but like,
lukewarm too. Yeah.
Yeah, but like
I
John
never heard
Piper,
watered
especially like prosperity gospel was like from John Piper in that realm was like it was watered down gospel. Watered down was a really big like phrase that I
Really
got
bad
all
to
the
be
time.
watered down. Yeah.
Yeah, and then my only last one. This is one of my favorites. I don't think it's necessarily the most accurate and maybe the most well known, but I just love it. But the secular band equivalent to a Christian band is the Beastie Boys to Family Force 5. I thought that was hilarious. Anything to make fun of Family Force 5, I will do it. I love making fam.
We did Warped Tour with them one year.
I used to
were
work
a
with
big
one of
fan.
their wives. Yeah.
That's funny. That's good.
That's really funny.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Trip, thank you for letting us have a launch party for our website in the COVID era.
Well, this is more fun than I anticipated, and I hope we come up with other reasons to do a similar thing again. Assuming anyone other than the four of us found this as enjoyable as our faces demonstrated, we found it. I feel like it's a large amount of group therapy connected to opportunities to make theological comments. Also, I just want to let everyone know that probably is on the internet right now trying to decide exactly how beautiful Stryper is. That the key thing to do is just to listen to the To Hell with the Devil album in a second naivete space. Don't listen to any of their new albums. It may or may not trigger the fact that they are indeed Trump supporters. Because when you have a song called Make the Gospel Great Again, there's only one way that can go, and it's down. But this is a launch party, Sarey. But if you were like, I just finished laughing, I forgot why we're laughing. Like, what are we launching? Like, I want to know WTF. Like, all these giggles make me need to do a Google search. And I just put it in safe mode because I don't want anything wrong to come up after all of Mason's like confessions about weird things he's Googled. But like, if we were trying to be theologically generative,
or careful with that Wikipediaing.
Yeah.
Final callback.
Yeah. Careful Wikipedian. No one needs to type in like, milliliters per donkey.
You know what? We need to laugh. Oh my. We need to laugh to keep from crying sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So You're Deconstructing.com. That's So You're Deconstructing.com, a new website to resource you through the process of deconstructing and reconstructing some kind of faith, some kind of spiritual life, which is healthy for every human being.
So you're there, like when you say you mean I should type you are, or I should put an apostrophe?
I'm saying you should type SOYOURE deconstructing.com. You can't put apostrophes in URLs. Most people know that.
I don't know that because I've been drinking along in this high quality podcast episode that inspires me to go to whatever the hell it was promoting. And now that I know the accurate URL, I'm going to go there after I listen to To Hell with the Devil by Stryper.
I want to add one thing. I would think that generally speaking, SoYou'reDeconstructing.com is less for the average homebrewed listener and probably more for like the people in that person's life. Yeah. Whether they are a minister or
it's the chick track of homebrewed listeners.
Yeah, it's just the thing that you probably know 10 people who could use it. Like if you're a longtime homebrewed listener, you'll find some stuff that you may not have known that you might find interesting. But it's more like when someone comes into your life or asks you like, hey, like, the whole Trump thing was weird and like I'm not really sure what to think about Christianity. Like there's a bunch of stuff there for that person, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and really we're just calling attention to the richness of the Christian tradition and the breadth of it. And so if you were just given one answer for your hard question that was acceptable, the website has other options for you.
That's what I'm talking about. So, Mason, I just want you to know that your commitment to this whole endeavor, having been talked in to joining, being the fourth wheel,
Yes.
and a threesome that are very dear friends to one another, and like spent a significant amount of time deciding like who we'd ask, that you were a wonderful
I was
addition.
genuinely nervous about Mason's participation in this because he's so clever on Twitter, and I just aspire to be that clever. I'm just saying. That's
And it
honest.
only proved to be disappointing to you, right?
No, I mean, you
No.
may look like you have a mullet
callback.
with the way your hat and your long hair work.
And there was a part where
shadows.
you disappeared behind a black curtain. You like went through this little hole in the wall, and it was mysterious.
There was the other part where you dropped your pants on the video,
I
but
had-
no
my
one
only
saw that.
my only disappointment, Mason, was given how which profile photos you choose for yourself on Facebook and Twitter versus how good looking you are on video in real life. I'm thinking, oh, he's handicapping himself, and I was a little disappointed by that because I don't like it when the next generation of theology podcast hosts can best me in any category, including physical looks. You know, I want to be on top. I feel like Tripp and I are maybe kind of punching similar weight. I don't want the younger guys coming up
Well,
to be
let's
better
just say
looking.
that if we're punching
You know
weight,
what?
outta
But
here,
here's the
Dan.
thing, Dan.
then we don't even want to bring Mason into the competition because there's like significant digits difference, you know?
Okay,
Here's the
that
thing,
was,
though,
like, nice
Dan. I can't compete against playing in a band like Sherwood.
Thank you for saying it right. Tripp calls it Sherwood.
I
which
mean,
is
what-
inaccurate.
Yeah, because I love Robin Hood.
Yeah, like
Okay, I have like a fussy 8-month-old. I have to get out of this chair. I gotta go.
Oh man, I love you three. Y'all are great, and
It's
I know that
fantastic.
for all of you, it's not 1 a.m, but for me, this is a great 1 a.m.
It is.
And when I'm tired
Guys.
tomorrow, I'm going to say to myself, I can't believe that they wasted all that time to get dominated by my Striper hypostatic union piece. And with that, so you're
Modalism.
we
deconstructing.com.
to find out that Michael Sweet is a Trump supporter.
They only got to go to his Twitter.
Remember, listeners, a vote for Tripp is a vote for Trump. Vote Dan, Mason, or Sarey 2020 to save our republic.
And while you're doing that, remember, those that identify with the least of these, like those with the least votes for the president. If you want to support Trump losing the presidency,